The Click R3 podcast is made possible by the viewers and supporters over on Patreon. If you would like to learn more about supporting the show, head over to spawncastnetwork.com. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Click R3 number 12 Thanksgiving edition. It's actually tomorrow when this goes up. So we made it in just in time before the holiday weekend, which is going to be crazy anyway. Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, it's just going to be mayhem. But we, of course, had a ridiculous amount of stuff actually for PlayStation happen over these last 2 weeks. So this is going to be a jam-packed episode, I feel like. So I had to bring in Ryan, who's able to sort it all out while I sit here and hopefully don't annoy people.
I had to bring in my co-host. Decided to bring him in again.
You know what? I did talk to Nano, Ryan, and people in the comments seem to like his input, his chemistry on the cast. I think we're going to be bringing him in more.
Yeah,
I think so.
That was great.
I think he's gonna be more of a regular around here. So people in the comments made it happen. Shout out to them. But yeah, I think it'd be a lot of fun having him here too, because he felt very strongly on the situation around the Game Awards, and I don't know, the Game Awards I need to look when those were again.
The 12th, I think.
So our next episode will be right before that.
Right before? Oh.
Yeah, so maybe we can get him in to talk about the lineup and his thoughts on the DLC situation. It was
it's on the show notes, so we'll touch on it too, but
okay, that'll work. This is Click R3 number 12. Of course, you too could support the show. Go over to spawncastnetwork.com, because we also have mailbag questions too, Ryan.
Yay.
So we actually had 10 of them.
That's good
this
stuff.
Episode. People coming out and somewhat current questions too about things like the handheld and stuff. So it's just good job, community. Yeah, really cool stuff.
Happy to have the viewers chime in. It's awesome.
Ryan's been active, man. Yeah, I was just talking to you, man. You got videos popping up everywhere. You got like the PlayStation, the 30. I only got this thing, which is
I'm surprised you only the controller, huh?
Yes. I thought about the Portal, because I've used my Portal quite a bit over the last like 2 months with these different games and football. But even so, like sometimes I'll be up before I'm going to bed. I'll pop the Portal on for like 20 minutes and play it. I got my situation figured out with the router upstairs, like from the basement, to make sure I have a good enough connection for that. And it's been great. So I've been playing like Dragon Quest 3 on there. That's a great one for that, because it's like that turn-based style. I thought about the Portal though. I did. But no, just went with the controller. Tried and true. I wanted that cable though. You got that cable, didn't you?
Yeah, the little PS1 connector that comes. Yeah, had to get the whole console for that.
I wanted that though. I wanted that cable, but
it's down there. It's all set up now. It's just eye candy for me.
Yeah. Did you turn the thing on?
Nope.
Wow. Okay. Keeping the same firmware and everything. No. Keep the firmware. Yeah.
That makes sense. So like it's weird, right? Because that spectrum is like some people are buying it, not even opening it. Some will open it and display it, and that's where I fall. And then some are like, no, I'm going to open it and play it. Which, hey, every option's valid.
That's awesome.
I want that thing open. I put the PS1 connector in. It's just on display, looking gorgeous. It's a nice looking console.
The one that I do have buyer's remorse about is the DualSense Edge.
The Edge I'm using. Like that I took out. I'm like, I'm going to use this. And so, because the thing too is like, when I got the first Edge, like that was my daily driver. And now I like never want to use a standard DualSense controller. But the Edge is like, I mean, the battery life in general for this thing has never been good. So like if a session is long enough, like you do hit the ceiling and you got to plug in. But now I got 2 Edges. John, I feel disgusted when my Edge dies and I got to pick up a standard.
Yeah, right.
Disgusting.
Trash out of here.
Now I got 2 Edges on the charging stand, so I'm good to go.
That's my problem right now. You got this sweet looking controller, and I'm like, man, I don't even want to use this thing. I just want to put it up somewhere and be like, look at that. Look at it. The buttons are nice. Yeah. I compared the color to like I have like just like a DualShock, the original one, that was laying around. The colors are like almost dead on accurate. They put some work into this thing. It wasn't just like, we'll phone this in and here you go. It's just the same color. Now the buttons are the right colors for the symbols, the nice PlayStation logo in the middle. It's a good looking controller.
And John, you're still fighting that little buggy out there.
Oh yeah, a little bit, It's nothing that like, but for a little while it was rough. Like, I was having a hard time just getting my voice above a certain volume, and I couldn't hit like any high notes. Your voice just doesn't work.
I was alarmed when I saw a news wave, and you're just like in your standard shot there. I'm like, oh my, where's the XMB?
I know, right? We can't. It's blasphemy. Yeah, this picks it up though at a low volume, so I have to like yell. Like the shotgun mic that's further away from me in the studio, I have to like kind of project more at it to get it to pick me up well.
Sure.
But this one, I could be kind of quiet and it'll still grab me. So
it's good. It's good. Well, good to know that you're repairing very slowly.
Yes,
got
on the up and up. We'll get there. How much stuff we got, Ryan?
Oh, geez, we got a lot. We'll try and fire off some of the simple ones here. PS Plus Extra November lineup live on PSN. Grand Theft Auto 5, Dying Light 2, Like a Dragon Ishin, MotoGP 24, The Sims 4 Island Living, Digimon Survive, Overcooked, Stick Fight the Game, Clash Artifacts of Chaos, Killer Frequency, Hungry Shark World, and Chivalry 2. All on PS Plus Extra. GTA 5 seems to really just be on Game Pass, then out of it, then on Plus again. It's like always a 6-month window, so
it bounces around, yeah.
How do people not already own that game? I don't know.
They said the number recently was like 210, 220 million, something crazy. I don't know.
There's probably people that were born after the game came out, and now they're like just old enough to like be a new buyer for the game.
Yeah, the game came out back in 2013. It was like right. I remember that because the new systems were there, and it was like, oh, we got to play this on the old thing or something like that, right? Yeah. It was something like that. It was weird. Let me make sure it was like right. Yeah. Okay. So it was just before
September 2013, I believe.
I remember when it came out. It was there was so much hype around PS4 and Xbox One and stuff, and we're like, this thing's running at 20 frames. It would be nice if it was on the new system. And we didn't get it for years later, but
no, it was a year. Yeah. It was a year after, wasn't it?
Was it 24? I remember they put first person mode in it, and that was a big thing. Was that 2014 when they did that? It might have been.
I feel like they shipped it in 2014.
It was November 2014. Yeah,
a little
like months later.
Over a year later.
But
going into premium though, we have Synapse for PSVR 2. Excellent PSVR 2 game.
I heard that was good.
One of my favorites.
I haven't played it.
Same studio behind PlayStation Home content, like a lot of like cosmetics and things. Undreams went on to start doing VR stuff. Then we have Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain, PS1, Blood Omen 2, PS2, and then Resistance Fall of Man and Resistance 2 for PlayStation 3. Now, what's notable here is that these are new PS3 games, and I mean new. They were never on PlayStation Now. I checked. I double-checked. Because Resistance 3 always was on PS Now. This, I'm truly baffled. I don't know what we're doing here. I mean, it's not hard per se, because it's still the same server blades, as far as I understand it. There's nothing different there. You just load up a different game, basically. Why they chose to do it now, I don't know. I feel like it's very unusual. Because I would have seriously considered the fact that maybe we're getting to a point where some games will start being taken down, and they're just not going to go back up.
So. Right. I don't want to read too much into it. It does. You're right. It does seem weird. 3 being there for, I mean, a while. So you said PlayStation nowadays, even.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, here comes 1 and 2. It's like, hold on. Are they doing something with Resistance? Or are they just looking for just something they can pull from the PS3 library and throw in there on streaming? Yes, but just to put in there, because the streaming thing is part of it. Sure, like it's kind of deflating, right? You're like, oh yeah, oh wait, it's streaming, but. I don't know, something to it because there's still the key art, the marketing, everything else that goes into that. It's I don't know, and maybe it's from the hopeful side that Sony would think about their live service ambitions and be like, oh, we do have those old IPs. Let's see what we can do. But maybe it is just as simple as I'm gonna get some PS3 stuff in there. Let's get Resistance. That's easy.
I think people would just much rather play the games locally, but.
Yes. Do we still think that's like a PS6 thing? Like I feel like the PS4 is in the way for this to work. Like at bare minimum, PS5 would probably be the system that would be able to do it, but surely PS6 would probably be the most desired target hardware, since they would be able to start designing it now with the idea of it doing it.
I don't even think 5 has the CPU overhead for it. Not for like really sell processor intensive games, which that's going to be first party. So
yeah,
I don't really want to get into it again. It's just, it seems very
Right.
strange that we had new PS3 games. I'm like, wow, I don't know what we're doing here, guys. But little side note for PS Plus Premium, you can now buy Dino Crisis and Resident Evil Director's Cut, with original purchases being honored as well. Considering like Dino Crisis just came out, I almost want to say like this was a reversed decision, like not necessarily a time thing, because it was a year that some of the other, what was it? It was like Mr. Driller and one
Resident
or two
Evil
other.
Director's Cut.
No, not Director's Cut. It was Mr. Driller was you that was gated behind premium for like a year, and then right on the dot after a year you could then buy it. This was like, I mean, Dino Crisis just came out. I feel like just enough people finally complained, or maybe we're sending, emails to Capcom or something. I don't know. Maybe they just figured there's just no upside here and let people buy it. So
Right. So is Dino Crisis and Resident Evil Director's Cut also available to buy now too?
yes,
Because that'd be both
you
from
can
Capcom.
these two.
I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know if that's like, I don't know. That is weird. You're right. Who knows? That's something we'll never hear about. Like why?
It was the Bandai Namco stuff, I believe, that there was like 2 or 3 titles that were initially the only ones gated behind premium, but then you could buy them like after a year. So it's like, okay, a year expired, we can sort of suss out maybe what happened there. But Dino Crisis just came out. I almost feel like it really was a matter of just Capcom saying, you know what, just let people buy them. Might as well make money.
Oh, either way, bottom line, you can buy them now, a la carte.
You can buy them.
Or if you had already purchased them previously, apparently they're just available in your library. So
Yep. Yeah. Original purchases should be honored, which I'll always say this too. Licenses don't go backwards. So if you buy on PS4, PS5, you're not granted a license on if you log into a Vita or a PS3. So if you are like a classic retro kind of guy, boot up your old system first, buy it there.
Smart.
It unlocks on PS4, PS5, more so because the price is actually still cheaper on those systems.
it was like $6 or something like that.
So, I mean, some games might still be 10. I mean, Ari Director's Cut probably was 10 on PS3. They were very selective. Like they knew back then, like even 10 plus years ago, like some of those PS1 classics, they would price like the cool stuff at $10. But like I've already seen a few cases where like you can just log into a PS3, buy it cheaper, get a license that covers 3, Vita, 4, 5, and also like you save $4 or something. So
I just remember that $5.99 price bar. Like that price point was just ingrained in my mind. Scrolling down, it was like $5.99, $5.99. I don't know. Maybe
it's for most of them
about marketing.
Yeah. It's for most of them, but some PS1 games were $9.99, and it was always the ones where it's like, oh, that's the one I want. So
yep. I remember they had like all the Mega Man X's were up on the Vita, and I remember I was playing them there, and they took them away for some reason.
Oh, really? Well,
I don't remember because X4 I had that, and I was like, I'm gonna buy X5. It was like a year later or something, and I couldn't find it on the store. So if anyone out there remembers this happening, let me know in the comments if that was a thing that you remember, because that for some reason that bugged me. I was like, the Vita was a great place to play these platformers with that D-pad and stuff. I don't know what happened there.
Well, they're going to take away more Mega Man very soon, John. Games are leaving PS Plus Extra and Premium, so you have until December 17th, I believe, to play these games. Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin, Moonscars, Mega Man 11, Grime, Tinykin, Proteus, Evil Genius 2, World Domination, Judgment, Dead Island Definitive Edition, Dead Island Riptide Definitive Edition, Giga Bash, Metal Hellsinger, Solstice, Vampire the Masquerade, Coteries of New York, and Mega Man Legacy Collection 1 and 2. So you got 3 Mega Man.
Wow.
Well, really more Mega Man games leaving.
Yeah, it's a lot of Mega Man actually leaving right there.
That's an exodus.
I will tell you this: those Mega Man games usually on like those Legacy collections, usually they're on sale. It's like they can be had for $10 most times. So
yeah, well, those will be leaving soon. Let's cover up some Black Friday sales. Black Friday's going on right now. PlayStation Black Friday. These go on for a while too, so you've got plenty of time even as you're listening to this. Very quickly, we'll just run through some of the deals going on right now. DualSense is up to 25% off. That goes until the 13th of December. PSVR 2 is up to 40% off, which is huge. It's like $350 now for that Horizon bundle. And that goes until actually next year, January 3rd, 2025. So you have plenty of time to do that. And I have noticed, John, my rolling 48-hour top 25 videos for views, PSVR 2 ones are ticking back up. People see that price. People see that price and they are looking up PSVR 2 reviews, how to set it up, things like that. I saw all my old PSVR 2 guides just jump right back up. I'm like, oh,
okay. Hey, you know what? These are the kind of things that you would expect to get people in, especially even if they don't have a PlayStation at $350. I think that's the number you read out. That's pretty good even for a PC headset.
I think it's great. Even with the drawbacks to be considered, $350 is for PC VR is pretty good. So there's that. All PS5 consoles on discount as well. That includes that Fortnite bundle, and that's going to be available until 25, right on Christmas Day. The sale's still going on, so they know kids opening up those gift cards. You got time to go to PlayStation Direct, get yourself a PS5. And then new PS Plus memberships, up to 30% off. Essential members looking to upgrade can save 25% upgrading to Extra, and then 30% to Premium or Deluxe. I guess this is really contingent on your account history. Not everybody is seeing a discount, and that's only until December 3rd. So they're being really picky with Plus memberships.
There's a lot of like fine print with those upgrades. I'm telling you, it's not just oh wow, PlayStation Network instead of $60 this year, it's half off. It's $30. Those are the days when it was just so straightforward. You buy the little card, you scratch it off real careful, and you punch it in. Now it's like all this fine little print underneath of it for if you qualify or not.
I like how we're getting nostalgic over like what is still like network services. I remember you'd buy the physical card and scratch it. Oh my God. How can we get nostalgic about that? Christ almighty. We have up to 40% off on the PlayStation Gear Store for select products. That's only until the 2nd, so you don't have much time left to buy PlayStation socks or perhaps a Concord hoodie. I don't even know if those are on sale or not, but because only certain things are on sale. But if you want gear, that's until the 2nd. And of course, a ridiculous amount of games are on sale. A lot of good stuff going on. This is where, whether it's PSN, retail, do your own due diligence. What we can say is that for the PlayStation Store, PS Stars finally has wallet redemptions back, at least $5. I checked my account. I finally have the $5 option, which is the lowest minimum. So cash out, especially considering PS Stars has been so unstable lately. So,
I should check mine to see if I have that now.
Whether it was an issue or they were A/B testing, I don't know, but it's there. So cash out.
I wrote down some deals right now for PlayStation on
I was going to ask
Friday.
If you have any game recommendations you've seen going on right now. So I've seen some good ones.
I covered some of this in the news show. And I end up, what I do is I end up going through pages and pages and pages and stuff just to see what it is. And I'll bullet point these things. But like, if you want to get real cheap with it, dude, Mass Effect Legendary Edition is $6. Those are 3 Mass Effect.
Oh my God. $6.
They're $2 each. Yeah. That's it. It's crazy. Need for Speed Unbound, which is the newest Need for Speed, is $7. I saw Monster Hunter Rise plus Sunbreak. That's the expansion for $20.
Are these PS4 or 5 versions?
They're PS5 versions.
Okay, cool.
So I go. They're all on the digital store. So
the store. Okay.
Network. I did see though that Walmart has Gran Turismo 7 for $20 physical. That's on the PS5. Yes, it was marked down heavily. What else was there? I saw Topspin 2K25. I've been looking at this tennis game. I was trying to get it under $20. It's 23. Like, okay. Metro Exodus 5. RoboCop Rogue City, awesome RoboCop game, is $20. Castle Crashers Remastered. I don't know if people remember that from back in the day. I played it on 360 way back when. $3.
Yeah, that was an early arcade game that I was jealous of not having on PSN back then.
Now you can have it for $3. So there you go.
Good stuff. All right. Which, I'll tell you, if you're looking to buy accessories, you might want to hold off though. If you want black versions of the DualSense Edge, Pulse Elite, and Pulse Explorer, because a report came out from Bilbo Kuhn writing for Deal Labs. Very reliable, very accurate. They're basically just seeing this information early. So these are showing up, they expect, within a month. Not a sale or anything, but it's just a matter of if you have some extra cash and you're looking to pick up an extra controller, if you want a black Edge, a black Pulse Elite or something, then you might want to hold off. And also in a separate report, apparently a Helldivers 2 standard DualSense is coming as well by the end of the year. The conjecture here is that because they have some accessories that they might announce, it's like, oh, well, how are they going to announce that? We know the 3rd's coming up very soon, 30th anniversary. Is there an event? Is there a state of play? Or is there a blog post in our future? Or it might show up during the Game Awards. quite frankly, I feel like it could be anything, especially with accessory announcements.
There's absolutely a blog post, right? Like they're gonna do a blog post either way, no matter what. It's like, hey, 30 years or something like that, bare minimum. Because we also had that My First Gran Turismo thing that was rated too. So that seems like that's ready to roll.
This is true. Yep. So that was rated in Taiwan for PS4, PS5. That was a part of the original 30th anniversary announcements. Kind of got lost in the weeds there between the squishy stress balls you could buy and the soundtracks on Spotify and all the announcements nobody cared about because now we had the cool consoles and controllers. But yeah, My First Gran Turismo should be coming up soon as well. So.
That's good news for 10 who asked over on the mailbag section here. I post just people quite wondering. I post a thread over on the Spawncast network, and people can just drop questions in there for any specific show. This was for Click R3. But 10 asked, "Is there any hope for a Helldivers DualSense controller in the future?" Well, look out for a week or two. I mean, honestly, probably a week or two. We're looking to. I mean, next week is the 3rd. That's what all eyes are on right now.
Yeah. That's the only thing is how they're going to do it. You got to figure at the very minimum no matter what, they always get a blog post, but it's like they sometimes will announce accessories during State of Plays or during like Jeff Keighley shows. I have to imagine they'll probably show up in some way, shape, or form during that stuff.
The Helldivers one feels random though, doesn't it? It almost feels like you would have that announcement alongside of an update for the game or something.
Maybe. The thing that was always puzzling is like, oh, okay, you guys made sure you had all the Concord stuff ready, but Helldivers too, like it took a while to get the gear store up and the DualSense. It seemed very clear they maybe weren't expecting this game to be as big as it was. So
yeah,
I'm curious as to what the design of it will be. If it looks just kind of like you just slap a logo on there, or is it a little bit more intricate? So either way. Got some Helldivers love coming in hot.
Big audience out there for that.
Big audience. So if you're in the market, just be aware that there is some new options coming in. Not for sale, but new options. With that in mind, let's talk about the 30th anniversary because that is coming up very soon. We're not going to have a show like during that week, I believe. So it'll be a little bit after. So what we can say is that today, actually, Sony put up a page on their site going over the history of their consoles. They do this with like the 25th, the 20th, I believe, just kind of like a little fun timeline for people to scroll through. So PS1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Vita, PSP. Here's some games that we released here, just PlayStation nostalgia. That's all it is. I mean, it's cool. But the infamous PS2 sales figure came up once again. This to me is not news. I don't know why people get so worked up about this. We initially had Jim Ryan on the PlayStation blogcast say that PS2 sold 160 million. And that apparently rifled some feathers. But once again, they listed PS2 as selling over 160 million consoles. Now, to recap why this is contentious is that the company has only ever officially, for the longest time since 2012, like the actual number they've told shareholders was 155 million. But PS2 manufacturing didn't cease until the following year. Conceivably, it is more than 155. And so when Jim Ryan said 160, that was like a big hoopla. They're saying it again, 160. John brought it up too. John, talk to me about this. What's going on here?
PS2. I'm going to bring this up. Here we go. PS2. It's going to load. There we go. Okay. So PS2, by the way, I really like the shot of it, the system. That's a nice looking shot, isn't it?
It's nice. Yeah. I mean, I always like stuff like this. It's also good B-roll, so I just capture all of it.
The orange, yeah. So we got some nice shots of it. Boom, 160 million. Not one more, not one less.
Over. Says with over 160.
Over 160. So yes, obviously this number here is just for the marketing. It's a nice, clean looking number, but more than 160 million. Jim Ryan mentioned this in passing in the interview as it was kind of like, what was that a big moment for you in your career? And he's like, we did the PlayStation 2. It's a really well-selling home console. It's like, yeah, it's the best-selling system ever made. He's like, I think it was like around 160 million. Clearly, he was throwing out an internal number that had not been updated at all. Like they knew they had that number, but it wasn't like what was really the point of them updating it until now when they're going back? Because people looked at this number and they're like, why are they announcing that? Technically, if you look at things like the PlayStation, they did the same thing right here. They gave us a sales number for it.
Yeah. They all have them.
Yeah. Well, almost.
Yeah. One of them,
how
they
about
did not,
the Vita?
one of them, they did not disclose it, but
I don't think the Vita got a number. If I'm not
yeah.
mistaken, it did not.
Actually,
the PSVR also didn't get a number.
well, I had to double check PS3 because I'm like, it did good, but like it's not the proudest number out there. But I'm like, oh, no, they did put it up there.
They did, yeah. It's like 80,
Yeah.
87 million, yeah.
87.
And PSVR didn't have anything either, like no number on that.
Yeah, I mean, when it's low, they're not going to say anything.
But people were looking at that, thinking that Sony was pulling a fast one, trying to widen the gap a bit between them and Nintendo with it. I mean, obviously the companies don't really care that much because, I mean, what's the difference between selling 150 something, 160? The difference is they're all making money. They're all making money. So who cares? The difference is a couple $1 million or something. So they're all happy to be making that kind of money off of us. So I don't think there's any contention for that. But even so, I don't even know if the Switch is that comparable to the PS2, because the PS2 is a box that you put under your TV and that's it. Like there's no hybrid gimmick or anything or idea to it. Any kind of the idea of handheld and console combined it's just their console. That's it. Like I don't know any other company that can make a box like Sony does and sell at that clip.
This is what's just like I don't care. I don't know. I don't care for this conversation. I don't know why people are so like stir crazy about it. I mean, it is like a lot of hardcore Nintendo folk that just want to see Nintendo like dethrone the PS2. But it's like, as you said, they're very uneven as far as like their footing, which one speaking to two marketplaces. Like I play my Switch primarily handheld. To me, it's like a handheld system. So I'm a buyer that's, you're speaking to two different audiences. That's why Nintendo did what they did with the Switch. And then like on the flip side, PS2 had this super long tailspin and it did really well in developing countries. And it's just so relevant for a long time. And home consoles just meant something different back then. And also, a little rant incoming. Everyone always likes to say it got to this number because it could play DVDs. Can we stop with that? I mean, come on.
I mean, that helped it a lot.
How much, John? Really?
It was good marketing.
Sure.
But the Dreamcast couldn't play DVDs. I think got worked quick.
Look, you can just look up software ratios. Like the PS2 is like what? It's like 9-10 games per console sold. Like it's just math. It implies people still bought PS2s and played games on their PlayStation 2, which I think Switch is around the same number. It's like 9 to 10 games per system sold. It's like, yeah, it has that extra utility, but if anything, that's why this is such a weird. It's just a dumb conversation. Like, yeah, like DVD player, two marketplaces. Give it a rest, guys. Companies like making money. They both sold a lot of consoles.
They did. They
So,
did.
There you
Switch
go.
can't play DVDs.
No, it cannot. God forbid. Maybe that was the thing it needed.
I needed that. Yeah. Wasn't
over 160.
Didn't need that. Need DVDs.
Switch could very well still reach 160. At this point, I'm not entirely sure if it will, because it's going to fall off a cliff once that next system gets announced.
I mean, it'll fall, but it will also have a cross-gen period. I think of like, honestly, it'll probably be like 2 years. Like even if Nintendo kind of moves on, I feel like some third parties are going to be trying to keep that thing going. Come on, we got to drop some more stuff on here. Capcom's trying to do something with it.
That's the thing. It still might not help. Like I thought the cross-gen period for PS4 was going to like inch it over. Mm-hmm. What would have been the next one on the
120?
Yeah, for Game Boy, right? It was Game Boy or Game Boy. What was the next system?
Yeah, Game Boy. Yeah, it might have been Game Boy. I know you mean like the list of like best selling.
It was like PS4 is at like 117. The next one was 119, I think. I think it was Game Boy or something. But I was like, PS4 is probably going to hit that. It's like, dude, it just like completely stopped in its tracks once PlayStation 5 came. So it's like they really have to do a really good quarter and then another quarter after that once like the next Nintendo hardware is out there. Like it's going to be very hard for them to hit 160. Although I wouldn't mind it. It'd be great for them.
It wouldn't shock me if they did it, just because Nintendo does that weird thing where I wouldn't be shocked, get this right, if they announced a new Switch revision after the next system comes out and it's just a cheaper version, like they did with they announced that 2DS XL after the Switch came out, and it's just a cheaper version of the 3DS XL, that 2DS formula. It wouldn't shock me if they did something like that, and it ends up they end up crossing that 160 million mark just because they keep selling the things anyway.
That's true. It's very possible. I could see that happening. With that in mind, though, let's move on to our next story. Got more Astrobot VIPs. John, did you see this? So all the new speedrun levels are out. I finally played them. Super fun.
Oh, good. Good.
But the credits were updated with a reference to new IPs. Won't mention it in the interest of not spoiling it, but combine that with the existing credits where that also spoiled IPs that actually didn't even appear in the new speedrun levels. It sounds like we might actually get more. So that's cool. So that means we might get more.
Good place to announce it. 30th anniversary.
Yeah, well, maybe. That's what I'm saying. We're knee deep in this this zone where like the company's probably going to say some things right before the year closes out, which I always expected. Just depends on what, when, how. I would say why, but we know why.
It all kind of adds up though. Now we're talking about all these things. We're like, man, they could actually put all this into one announcement, like one page blog post, or even a little state of play.
You would think,
just all together.
But like the amount of times where it's like they could have had so many things piled up and thrown it into a state of play, and they just simply didn't this generation. It's happened so often. I don't
want to get people too excited over something that might legitimately just be hey, thanks for giving us your money for 30 years. But I mean, I'd like to think they have something fun in mind, just to be like, hey, one last thing, here's this fun stuff, and we're gonna give an announcement or an update on Wolverine, and then we'll see you next year. I don't know.
Yeah, something. Who knows? I just wouldn't expect a showcase, but you never know. All right, let's move on to Lego Horizon Adventures. Came out. Reviews sitting at a 71, I think, on Metacritic right now. So kind of like, decent, not amazing. And with that, confirmed a new Lego set as well, which I was hoping for. It's an Aloy, Varl, and Shellwalker and Sawtooth set. That's going to come out next year. I haven't picked it up yet, but I mean, like, the big complaint is that it is like really short, which like I actually like that. So
I kind of walked past it too. I don't know. At some point, I already talked about how my Lego fatigue had kicked in for the games, like especially at that Star Wars Lego game, the Skywalker Saga, or whatever. That was just it's a long game. It just kept going. I'm like, I think I'm Legoed out for a while. So in that regard, yeah, it's nice that this is shorter. But it seemed like some of the reviewers were expecting something else. I don't know. I was going through the reviews and like, I don't know if they understand what the Lego twist is on a franchise, but they went in thinking like, oh, here's Horizon. It almost felt like they were looking for like that big Horizon spinoff. And it's like, oh,
maybe
it's just Horizon Zero Dawn, Lego, and easy. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's for a younger audience. Like we all know this, right? That's the idea.
Well, for a younger audience and grown men like me that want a nice platinum.
Well, yeah, the platinum chase for sure. But the idea is, hey, do you have kids that maybe aren't quite old enough to experience the Horizon Zero Dawn as it is, but you still want to be able to play the game with them and drop a co-op? Here you go. It's kind of the idea, I feel like. And it's just, I don't know. I get it's not like this incredible blockbuster title, but I think for what it is, it didn't shock me when I heard some of the things around it being shorter and easier. It's like, it's kind of what I expected.
That doesn't seem bad. Just, kind of a 7 out of 10 game. Very short. I'm sure I'll get to it at some point. But we do have more Horizon news on the horizon. See what I did there? We got a new job posting on Gorilla's site, spotted by Joe Raptor, for a release QA intern. Now, the job specifically points out that you'll acquire both theoretical knowledge and practical experience to ensure the game is prepared for launch. And the internship is available for the first half of 2025. A release QA internship first half of 2025. What could this be? Well, the thing that we know is probably up next is the Horizon multiplayer game. That would be the one that's properly under Gorilla, not like an NCSoft MMO style game that we're still expecting is also a thing. So yeah, this game has been in the oven for a long time, since 2018. That was when they brought on Simon LaRouche to direct that game. I believe he's still on that title, still directing. I mean, this thing's got to be coming soon. And based on how they've done live service announcements and releases, I mean, and this is the case for a lot of first parties as well, like traditional single player experiences, I should say. release and announcement is a much tighter window than what we've seen previously. So the expectation probably is we'll see this thing announced and then possibly released very soon.
Like all in the same year. So like next year we see it announced and that comes out months later.
I probably that's what I expect.
We're playing this, right? As a multiplayer Horizon game on PlayStation. I assume we're playing this.
I mean, I'm not a multiplayer guy, but I'll give it a shot. It is Horizon. I like the universe. And I like the gameplay.
I feel like her multiplayer would work well here because Ryan, we've been through it. We like the Horizon franchise. We played through the games, but man, whenever we run into somebody who's not feeling it, it always comes back to Aloy. It seems like as like one of the things that's kind of like just throwing me off. I like the idea of robot dinosaurs, but Aloy is just not doing it for me. Personality wise, whatever. The story for in this case, I assume we're making our own characters.
Well, do you remember the leaks for it? Which, I mean, a lot of this could have been changed at this point, but like the whole premise of the game, or rather the art direction, is that it's a bit more cartoony,
like Fortnite style. That'll go over well.
I mean, but the thing is, it could look so different because like the leaked footage and like concept art is very much just that. It's early footage and concept art. But in theory, the idea is they're like, cartoony looking. I think it was like alpha footage or something, but it was basically like a super cartoony Fortnite character dropped into literally just like Forbidden West environments. So it's likely not going to stay like that. It could look very different. It could have a very different identity versus what we typically see from this franchise.
I'm picturing like a Monster Hunter type game.
Yes, potentially. Which
how cool would that be? We all have to go after big enemies, like almost Shadow of the Colossus style, but a bunch of people, hunters around it, trying to take it down, and then and we get cool pieces for armor that you build up. I mean, the gameplay loop is there,
Yeah, my concern is that I can't see it. I don't want to say not do well, but like I got a bad feeling about this.
Oh man, already putting that out there.
I like single play. I like their single player games. I think their single player games will still do well. Like the third game will probably still do fine. This, I feel like it's nothing's a surefire thing, but I wouldn't expect the same level of energy going into it that a single player title would.
I mean, well, okay, so the same, but do you think because they would pitch this as you don't need to have played the other two to play this, that it might have a better shot than we're two sequels deep now? Like that's what we see with some of these games when they come out. It's like, yeah, but it's a sequel, so it's not going to sell as well as that one. And then the one after that is another sequel, so it's not going to sell as well as this one. Sometimes having that clean break, in this case, multiplayer might be good for the franchise to see if they can tap into that multiplayer.
I think there's just a number of hurdles just holistically they're facing right now. Like they're not really in a good spot with this stuff, right? Because like, okay, they had the whole Helldivers 2 fiasco. It's a game that did well, but Sony didn't come out looking like the good guy in that scenario. Concord was a big disaster, and everybody's pointing and laughing at Sony. As we say, as you just mentioned, there's the Horizon fatigue and this idea that the franchise isn't big or that people like it. Sony already has a poor reputation with live service in general. It just like this game has so many hurdles going against it now. And that's what upsets me, is that I feel like this might be very good, but now it's like almost walking into another Concord thing of like, oh man, well, people are going to judge it based on X, Y, and Z things. And I mean, especially like when this game ships on PC, I think a PC audience is really going to be, I mean, I can see it looking very ugly with the sort of narrative that's going on nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, if they can have a good first impression, like what I would do is if I was Sony, I would really be looking at Capcom, how they present Monster Hunter and show it off, provided that's kind of a similar loop that we're all expecting it to have. And just, man, do your best to have a good first impression. Because if you Concord it, it's over before it gets out of the gate.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I'm nervous about the game. I'll say that. Let's move on to Naughty Dog's next game. A very small thing popped up here in a GQ piece about Troy Baker working on Indiana Jones and things like that. He confirmed he will return for Naughty Dog's next project. So Troy Baker, the guy that gets a lot of work in the games business, voicing characters, and has historically worked on many Naughty Dog projects, he's going to be in the next one. I can't say I'm surprised.
No, he's everywhere almost. Yeah,
Guys everywhere. I do want to clarify something else popped up too with this. It seems like it's false information. It was like a LinkedIn post, a LinkedIn listing of a guy that worked at Naughty Dog, and the time it's apparent that's like not even a real account. So just putting out there, if you've seen that, there's no.
Didn't stop it from getting circulated quite heavily on social media.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I'll do this on LTPS. I'll cover news that I know is not like a real thing, just to sort of dispel the misinformation. So you saw this, that apparently is not a real account, not a real person. You can look up, you can go on Moby Games and just look up credits. Like the person seemingly does not exist. So
a lot of anticipation around that Naughty Dog game, though. It's gonna be fun when they finally are able to show it. So Neil Druckmann having a lot of probably a lot of say, able to do basically what he wants.
Yeah, I mean, Naughty Dog is that studio that has that creative autonomy. So I mean, this next Naughty Dog project from Neil, it's gonna be a big deal because it's been such a long time too since Naughty Dog's been able to show something like truly new.
This is gonna sound weird, but I do kind of hope it looks very different from Last of Us.
I would agree.
I hope it looks very different.
I would assume the studio creatively wants to be in that place of doing something that feels and looks very different. I mean, there's probably a lot of DNA ingrained in this next project that, you look at it and go, oh, that's a Naughty Dog game. But I would have to imagine everyone wants to sort of start flexing their creative prowess and do something different. Let's move on to some hardware news here. PlayStation Portal 4.0 update. We have a big update here. Not many changes on the change log here. Volume adjustments are more accurate, lower sound floor. You probably noticed this, John. Like if you keep the volume on like the lowest setting, for some reason it was like still really loud. Now it's like, they fixed that. PlayStation Link settings are on there now too. So if you have an Explorer or an Elite connected, you can adjust side tone volume, EQ presets, things like that. Big thing though, PlayStation Plus Premium Cloud Streaming. We can finally stream PS5 games directly on the portal, not connecting to a personal PS5 console in your home network. It's currently in beta with, Sony says 120 games, but like I went through it, it's like more than that. So it's like nearly 200 games or something like that that's available. Native PS5 only, no PS4 servers, no PS3 servers, no premium trials for PS5 games, just a curated catalog of 200 something games. Can do 720p or 1080. And also, I'm not sure if you saw this, the micro stutter has been fixed as well, which was a weird issue with 60 hertz games being sent to the portal screen, but it's like 59.9 something or whatever. So it's like creates a very slight micro stutter every like one frame or something. So that's been fixed, but the streaming is really a big deal. It's finally here. What do you think?
Yeah, I had played around with it some, and I eventually got a chance to do a video. I had to wait a while for my voice to come back, but I took a look at it. People seem genuinely interested in the portal because of this cloud streaming ability. That, I mean, when we got the portal at first last year, we all did kind of look at it and be like, why can't this just stream games too? It seems in our mind it was like it made sense to do that, and Sony, to their credit, must have looked at that and been like, huh, okay, like. We all kind of know because they had that backstory for the portal where some of the engineers and people at Sony sort of talked about in an interview. It's like, yeah, it's kind of a thing we threw together. And I mean, I believe them because you look at it and you're like, yeah, it's a DualSense with a screen in the middle of it. Sure. But it does appear to me anyway, that Sony is, I don't want to say taking a liking, but is like, oh, okay, we thought we were going to move 50,000 units or 100, whatever. And it's like, oh, okay, it's doing a bit more than that. People seem interested in this thing. Let's see what happens with cloud streaming with a beta. And as you mentioned, they threw more than 120 games at almost 200. And, the quality is not bad. Like I'm playing this, I'm thinking, okay, I can tell it's cloud stream. There is some latency there, but it's not like, I remember the Gaikai days, on live days where it was like, oh God, you hit the space bar and like, okay, now they jump, it was like that. We've come a long way with cloud streaming. I don't believe that it's a replacement for native gaming yet. And I don't know if it ever will be, but it is a nice thing to just have. It's convenience for PlayStation Premium members. It's like, hey, if you have the subscription and you're out with your PlayStation Portal and your PS5, something happens and you can't contact your PS5 anymore. I mean, normally that's it for your Portal. It's not doing anything anymore. But now you can cloud stream. And I mean, I fired up Ghost Tsushima and my save file was there. I started up Dragon Ball Z Kakarot and my save file was immediate and it ran well enough. So I like this for the Portal. And you know what I wonder now, Ryan? We're going to talk about the handheld stuff later. Sure.
Yep.
We have the PS5. We have PlayStation VR. Are we sure that this couldn't just be another line of like, I don't say systems, but like devices for Sony? Could the PlayStation port, can we get a next gen Portal in like 4 years?
They keep saying this a lot every time they talk about the Portal. They keep saying our first remote player device. They consistently have said our first remote player. I mean, it's such a basic product in theory, but one that can be so iterative. New one, new battery life or extended battery life, different screen. You know, we've slimmed it down. I mean, it's begging to be iterated on. So yeah, I think it's almost a certainty that we'll see another one, you know.
Here's another interesting thing I want to ask, Ryan. Is it possible, because we're starting to see we hear the PS6 rumors and stuff going around right now. They're starting their development. Makes sense. We're probably, we believe, 4 years out from it launching in 2028. Okay. Is it possible that the next gen Portal does act like a Wii U to where it has an ability to have a direct connection to the system if you're in the same room?
I damn sure hope so. Yeah.
Dude, that'd be it. I'd be like, you know what? I'm getting one of these things day one.
Although in theory, the handheld rumor that we'll talk about later sort of implies that maybe that's not necessary. So really depends on how that shakes out. Well, we will talk about that later, but the streaming is a pretty big deal. It adds a lot of utility to the Portal. As you say, if you're for whatever, like I know a lot of folks like don't even like using like rest mode on their PS5s. Like they just don't like it. They just always turn it off, which means the Portal is dead to you. You can't use a Portal.
Mine's on rest mode. I was like, wait, do I have it on rest mode? I get what you're saying though. A lot of times I will turn it off. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but like I know people that are like, I just do not use rest mode. It's like, well, you'll never use a Portal. I mean, unless you like you want to go out of your way to like you're at home, you make sure to manually turn it on, and that's a real use case too. But just it's always tied to that. It seemed like a natural evolution for this thing too. So maybe at a certain point they'll unlock everything else about it, but nice to have that. I experienced, for me, it felt like a lot of latency. Like the image quality looked amazing, looked great on mine, but like I'm a little bit more sensitive to latency. So I was like, oof. I'm like, oh, this isn't really playable to me, but it looks great. So it could have been just like maybe just like a weird issue at the time. I still got to do like another session and play more of it.
Yeah, I had an art experience with it. Again, you can tell there's latency issues, but I assume that their catalog will grow over time, and maybe you'll get the point where I think cloud streaming works really well for turn-based games. Like that's easy,
yeah,
something like that. Like if Metaphor is all of a sudden able to be streamed, there you go. That's an easy one to play because I'm actually playing that through remote play now mostly. So,
there you go. Yeah, it's weird because like the PS5 server blades on the console directly was like really good latency wise, but then on the Portal it's like woof, that was a big jump.
We are going through Wi-Fi on that, whereas with the PS5, I assume many of us are hardwiring that thing.
Mine is hardwired, but I always make a case to not use hardwire when I try streaming. Because you just have to, okay. I mean, you have to try the sort of worst case scenario. If Sony and any company wants streaming to take off, it has to work via wireless. Not everybody's going to hardwire their internet. They're just not going to do that. So it's up to them to figure that stuff out. So I always try to test it without hardwire. Let's move on to some PlayStation 5 Pro news. We've now had the console for coming up on 3 weeks. We do have some initial sales data coming in. Recent launch week sales coming out of Japan from Famitsu showed that the Pro sold 78,000 units, which for comparison's sake, PS4 Pro sold about 65,000 units during its launch back in 2016. The following week, it fell off a cliff, and I think that was the same for the PS4 Pro back then, but like similar launch week sales. Matt Piscatella of Circana, tracking video game sales data in the US, mentioned that PS5 Pro had a solid start during its launch week with units in the same ballpark as the PS4 Pro's launch. So no hard numbers, but same ballpark. I feel like this is an open and shut case. The low volume console is selling the same as the other low volume console. The only difference is that just adjusted for inflation, this thing's still pretty expensive relative to PS4 Pro back in the same time frame. But
it is. It's
doing well.
If we adjust for inflation, $400, we'll say from this time 2016 to now is like $530. So this PS5 Pro is like
still expensive.
$170 more, and then you also need to buy the disc drive, which the PS4 Pro came with a disc drive installed. In that case, it's like almost, in some regions it's even more than that, but it's like $270 more. So I feel like Sony's probably pretty happy with that number. They're probably thinking, wow, that's about what we were hoping for, so we'll take it. I would assume, though, by the way, that big drop off you see in Japan, most likely because they sold through units they had, and like that, you're just seeing the stock just completely be depleted now, and they would have to replenish it if they were going to just sell more. So we're going in the holiday season. I actually assume that number is going to jump again. So
yeah, more than likely.
In Japan, it's like $870 or something there, isn't it? Or $830?
It's an ungodly. I mean, the yen is so weak. So
it's expensive there, and it's honestly, when I saw the number, I was like, wow, that's better than I thought it would do.
It's how many times can it be said? Like there are buyers for this thing. They've got money. Like they've got money. They're gonna. It's not something everybody's buying. It's something that a select few are buying, and they are doing it. We've got some new Pro patches, 8K patches, I should mention. Which that's the weird thing, is that we have more 8K games. The Callisto Protocol got a PS5 Pro patch.
You can fire that one up.
You can play it performance with full RT, 4K 60, but let's be honest. You want to play that at 8K 30, which you can now do. And then there's also Redacted, which is like a isometric kind of like stenciled looking game. So like more like modest as far as like what the game is trying to accomplish, but that also has a 4K 120 or 8K 60 mode. Look, I'm just going to give credit where it's due. We can point and laugh at 8K all day, every day, but this is like more games than I thought we would actually get. Genuinely, we are getting 8K games.
If you play Callisto, you can put it in the 8K mode and it'll downsample it for your screen, so you can still kind of use that mode.
Okay.
Yep, it's 30 frames though, so I turned that on. I was like, okay, that's enough of that. And then I went to the 4K 60 with ray tracing. Dude, if you want a game to showcase the PS5 Pro or a new TV you get for Christmas or something, that's the game. Download that immediately.
Callisto looks insane, doesn't it?
Oh, it's incredible. And in this case, I played through it originally when it came out in like the performance mode, and it was a little blurrier that way. Dude, it's clean looking on the PS5 Pro. It's crazy. Ray tracing on everything. So yeah, if you want a good example, download that, play it. I was so on the game itself, but visually speaking, this is probably one of the best games I've ever seen in terms of visuals.
Oh, there you go. So it's just I'm baffled. I'm like, wow, we actually are getting a handful of 8K games.
Yeah, PS6 coming through. They're going to solve that real quick for us. Going to get nice, clean 8K games across the board in like 4 years. So get ready with those TVs.
Thank God. Well, it's not all good news though, John. It's not all good news. We have Star Wars Jedi Survivors with its Pro patch. That added RT reflections, but the PSSR implementation has created a range of like visual issues that make the game look worse than the base console's performance mode. What's going on here? And then Handheld 2 also had some like really weird like shimmering issues, a lot of visual noise and like instabilities when the character is in motion. Both Bloober Team and EA said they're looking into it. Bloober, I think, already shipped patch 1.06 or something, which they took out PSSR, if I'm not mistaken, and put back in TSR. I think maybe as like a temporary fix. I'm already seeing people say like it didn't really change anything. I haven't really looked into it too much. But it does seem like there's maybe some growing pains initially. Like one developer chimed in on Reset Era, the developer behind Albatross, and they gave their insight into this, saying that like Jedi Survivor is a UE4 game on SDK 9, and so therefore it's probably using a very early version of PSSR, maybe like the first one. And there's already been like multiple versions of PSSR. As a consumer, we don't know what version a game is using per se, but they're just attributing it to maybe that. But it seems like we're going to have some growing pains. It would be problematic if you buy a Pro, and it's not like people are going to fire up 20 games like we're doing. Like they're going to buy a Pro, then just start playing the one game they want to play. If the one game you want to play is Jedi Survivor, it's going to look worse on this console. So that kind of sucks.
It's a Star Wars game. That's the thing. Like that is a brand that probably would get played over the holidays with the new PS5 Pros. That Silent Hill, again, I like Silent Hill, but it is that mature rated horror style game. So it's not Star Wars. Basically, Star Wars is the one that I would look at and be like, well, let's get this thing sorted out quick. Let's figure this out. Which that's the game that on its own, when it first came out, had all kinds of issues. That was a big thing. That was one of the reasons. That was one of my favorite games of the year, but I couldn't recommend it to people because the thing was just like busted at launch. It's like, well, I like playing through the jank, but not everyone else is going to. It's a shame because if it came out and like ran decent and played well in that regard, technically, that to me might have been one of the best games of the year. So it was a shame.
Well, it's also highlights the issue of, well, it shouldn't be an issue, but in this case it is, which is developers can do what they want as far as like what improvements they want to offer. You know, like I was actually surprised, like last episode between you and Nano, it's like, were you guys getting it like, oh, it's cool that there's a lot of modes, but also maybe there's too many modes sometimes, and it would be simpler to just have one pro mode that just sort of figures it out for you. Like, here's the new setting, here's the high-end version, it's playing automatically, and it's just kind of a thing that you don't have to worry about. But in this case, that's a detriment because you can't choose the other modes. Like some games let you do that, where it's like, here's the pro setting. If you want, for whatever reason, maybe because we have unlocked frame rate on like the older mode or something, you can choose that. And that would be your, like, in a circumstance where maybe the pro support has an issue, you have something to fall back on while the studio works on the pro patch.
Right.
So it's kind of an awkward spot. Yeah, it's a really awkward spot with like these two games in particular, because you actually get like a worse experience and you can't really like say no to it. Although I haven't played these two games in particular, so I don't have firsthand knowledge of
how good.
How bad
Silent Hill 2 is good.
Yeah, well, they're good games from what I hear. So
like them both. They're very good.
Playing them.
Silent Hill 2, man, that's a game that they could just get it right. It looks good on PS5, but man, I could just imagine if that PS5 Pro could stretch its legs, it would look pretty sick.
Yeah, and the only footage I saw was from Digital Foundry, and it does look a little odd with the shimmering issues in particular. Like if you notice it really sticks out. Let's move on to PlayStation 6 rumors, though. Yes, we are getting them. Finally, thank God. I'm so tired of the 5 is my least favorite number. This comes from the Chip Hell forums from a known hardware leaker. Apparently, they've been very reliable in the past, and they claim Sony's next generation console will use AMD's UDNA GPU architecture. So after RDNA 4, the naming convention is moving to UDNA, which would be used to power PlayStation 6 and AMD's RX 9000 series, their next lineup of hardware that they're like going to ship in. What is that, like the second quarter of 2026 is what we're expecting. And then yes. CPU wise, the console is expected to use either Zen 4 or Zen 5, but this is a decision that Sony has apparently not locked down just yet. They also mentioned that Sony's handhelds will use AMD hardware, whereas Microsoft's handhelds, they're deciding between Qualcomm and AMD, which a few days after this, we had a Bloomberg report put out about a PS5 handheld that Sony is indeed working on one. It's years away, but it's meant to expand Sony's reach and try and compete with Nintendo, possibly portable PCs as well. And that's according to an undisclosed amount of people familiar with the matter, which that report also said, the Portal was initially intended to be a full-on portable itself. And then shortly after that, we had a report from Tom Henderson of Insider Gaming chiming in, saying that this development began after they released the Portal. So the company saw the Portal do well, exceeded expectations. That's when they started development of this truly portable PS5. So a lot to take in here for hardware rumors. How are we feeling about, the next 4 years?
Well, the UDNA stuff makes sense. It's AMD's next generation stuff. And the thing that's so interesting about this is we see what happens with Sony. They typically will collaborate with AMD, and they have a good relationship to where they'll develop this stuff with AMD, and the new PlayStation system will come out like the PS5 Pro, for example, has some features that aren't in AMD's video cards right now. Happened with the PS4 Pro as well, where like Polaris was like available certain parts of it just to the PS4 Pro, and then eventually made it way to AMD video cards. So now I'm just kind of thinking about AMD's UDNA stuff, which will, as you mentioned, we'll see more in the future here. But their big push with that is to integrate AI further into gaming and like their cards. And I'm thinking, okay, AI upscaling, that's obvious, but maybe other things that Sony has in mind for using additional compute power with AI, maybe when it comes to game development or with like these different worlds they're building out in games, different ways to utilize that for, like, I'm trying to think what the next gen leap will be, because when we start thinking of PS6, we already were joking about 8K. That's the push. That's the market. 8K. I don't know if that's a great selling point anymore. I don't know if the resolution can carry, like resolution or visuals can carry as much as it could in previous generations. And I almost wonder, like AMD, even video cards are going to have to deal with this, because I feel like most PC gamers aren't even thinking above 4K. Many of them aren't even thinking about 4K. It's like 1440p.
Yeah, 1440.
Ultra wide. That's the move. They're all happy with that. And honestly, that's what I have. I have a 1440p ultra wide with G-Sync. And I'm like, this is perfect. I don't mind going any higher than that. So I think they're trying to figure out different things to do. And that UDNA tagline that came up, and then looking into it and be like, okay, this is their push to AI. It does make me think that is going to be like the big revolution, quote unquote, the next gen thing. I'm trying to think of how they would utilize it effectively. And what the big aha moment would be with that, because we're still early days for AI technically, even though it's accelerating rapidly. And I don't even think right now we're going to be able to comprehend or imagine what's going to be capable of this stuff even 5 years from now. And well, hey, that's when we should have a PS6.
Mm-hmm. The thing I always think about is tools. It might be something where it's not as obvious for the consumer, but you know, like the core principle of like PS4 and 5 was developer outreach and trying to make it as easy as possible to make and ship games on their platforms. Well, with AI, I imagine a big part of PlayStation 6 is going to be the SDK and what kind of tools are available for studios. And anybody that gets a PlayStation 6 software development kit and what they'll now have access to as far as building whatever they want to build on this console. You know,
you think that's the move, huh? Is because eventually somebody has to solve the development problem that's going on right now in the industry, where these development times keep ballooning, and we're talking about generation long dev cycles. Well, eventually somebody has to solve that, or a generation long dev cycle will become a generation and a half long. What we're seeing right now with Rockstar between GTA 5 and GTA 6, that might end up just being the norm for like these big AAA games someday. Like that's just how long it takes to make these things. And that's, maybe you're right. Maybe that's the thing that would really, that would be, I don't want to say next gen defining, but certainly for developers, it would be if they could tackle these more intricate, big AAA style games without worrying about a 7-year runway for development.
Yeah. I'd have to imagine a part of this console is reducing that friction. Because I'm sure everybody wants to figure this out. How do we get these games out the door faster and not compromise on quality as much? I'm sure that's something that's heavily considered. You know, at a certain point, it's like maybe we don't have to make a 150-hour game with this crazy amount of content that takes 8 years to make. If it takes 8 years to make, maybe we can scale that back a little bit and also shave off other elements of the business that, again, it's friction. The issue here is that like this is probably going to cut into the workforce as well, which we've already seen take a huge hit in the last 2 years. So that portion of the business could get ugly, but I'd have to figure it's a lot of back end tools that they're trying to capitalize on.
Do you think it's funny that we're talking about the PS6 already? Does it feel like an already situation? Because it's been 4 years since the PS5 launched, right?
Yeah, that's why this to me is expected. One of my predictions from the start of this year, 2024, I'm pretty sure I predicted it, but it was a matter of like where we're going to start getting them. I'm like, this year's when we'll get PS6 rumors. We're 4 years in, and it's the kind of rumors of exactly what we're hearing about, which is like the hardware roadmap from AMD. as you say, they're going to start collaborating. Sony and AMD are going to, figure out certain GPU features, and a lot of that is going to be baked into their silicon for the next thing that they end up releasing.
I just wonder if Sony will create their own like assistant personality that just is in your PS5. Like your PS5 just starts becoming kind of sentient with you. Would that be weird to you?
Yeah.
Would that be weird to be playing one night with the PS5? It's nice and quiet. Crickets are outside, 10 o'clock at night or something. Not a lot of movement. Just hanging out. And then all of a sudden the thing pops up out of the screen. It's like, oh, what's going on?
What is this picture you just painted? What this dystopian picture? Quiet
in the house, just playing a game. Other people are all asleep. It's just nice and quiet. Summer night, maybe got the window open a little bit. Crickets outside. All of a sudden, I don't even know what would they have, because Microsoft had Clippy, right? And then they had Cortana.
Oh,
what would you have PlayStation?
It has to be an Astrobot.
It has to be an Astrobot. Yeah. Okay.
It has to be a little Astrobot in the corner. Hi, I see you're trying to install a patch.
Would it just be like super condescending all the time?
Oh yeah. Yeah, you should cancel that and try it again. Yeah. Actually, not even joking, that probably is the other element of where they take this thing, because graphics, frame rate, resolution, sure, it's all getting better, but it's diminishing returns. Like this console principally was fast loading times, and then for studios accessing the SSD and having that basically be a giant secondary pool of RAM, but also sensory experiences, the DualSense, 3D audio. You have to imagine PlayStation 6 is going to be another element of expanding on the user experience. Like I think the UI is going to be the big jump here too. So unironically, maybe an AI assistant, something that again reduces that friction for the user experience on this console. And they probably learned a lot. They probably learned a lot from activity cards and the lack of them being used. And okay, how do we sort of reinvent the wheel and make it so that people can really play games in such a manner that is maybe what we were trying to accomplish on this console.
Like I'm wondering if, for example, just as something thrown out there for you mentioned convenience, lowering the friction. If there's a game you see on your like on TV for their commercial playing or something, and then you're like, oh, let me check, and it's on PlayStation Plus, and you can just tell your phone real quick, hey, get that installed on my PlayStation, and it'll do that while you're even away from your house, or things like that, where your assistant, again, it's kind of strange, but your PS5 in rest mode would be able to have your little assistant go in and install the game for you, and maybe it doesn't even have to power on. Like it physically looks like it's powering on, it's just always in rest mode. It's like, I got it. Don't worry. It's low powered. It'll pull the data. It'll install it. No issues. That would be interesting.
I imagine they would just integrate this with existing APIs and what assistant would be available on your handset. Like you'd say, hey Siri, install this PlayStation Plus game, and it would do it.
The other bit of friction, because I'm just thinking of these things that are keeping people from games at that exact moment. Because this happens to me sometimes, where I take a game, pop it in the disk drive, right, and let's face it, there's a good chance that next gen 2028, we might not have discs anymore. I know it's a whole thing still to go over, but let's just say we have a disc and you pop it in or you're downloading it. I wouldn't mind seeing them use some of that AI addition that they have here to be able to. So for a while they were like, oh, you get to a certain point, you can start playing the game and we'll download the rest in the background. Not always. Sometimes it's like, hey, you can start the game, and you go to hit start, and it's like, oh, hold on, we got to install this. But it's a different menu in that game. It's like, now you can watch the bar fill up in here with music in the background.
Yeah, I've seen that.
I almost wonder if we get to a point where the whole situation with AI, the extra silicon, whatever they have, would also be able to figure that out better. And it's like, we're going to pull the data we need and streamline it in. So every game you can just start up immediately. There is no installing from a disk, downloading for some people 30, 40 minutes, an hour, none of that. You don't have to worry about it. It's just, you start. It's like when you pop a game in back in the day for a system, whether it's on the PlayStation 1 or 2 or a cartridge on Nintendo, it just starts. That's it.
Yeah. And that'd be a huge quality of life improvement. I'd like to see that. Not to retread the same steps here, but have you tried voice commands on PS4 and 5 right now?
No.
It's very basic. Like, it's not AI or anything, but it's like they have voice commands now, so that's also a slight little look into.
I did get a new phone, Ryan. Okay. I did move over to the iPhone.
Okay.
Thought I would try that, and I signed up for the Apple Intelligence thing. Okay.
And I'm not in it right now.
You're not? No. So I
No.
signed up, but I didn't get in yet. And but on my Mac Mini, they said I'm in.
Oh,
Not on my iPhone. So I was going to try that out, but apparently that is pretty good. So some of this AI voice recognition and reasoning and be able to recognize images and all kinds of stuff is getting a little otherworldly almost. So I wanted to try that Apple Intelligence, see how that would do. But you say it's pretty rudimentary with Sony.
I mean,
for what they're doing.
It's literally like speak loud and clear. Hey, PlayStation,
Mm-hmm.
open Astrobot. Like it'll do that. But it's like if we start thinking about like what real intelligence is, AI intelligence is nowadays,
Where you just kind of have a
intelligence,
conversation, like very, very basic, matter of factly, yeah,
I mean,
open Astrobot, and it just does it.
I mean, you got to think in context of like what the user experience would even be on a console. Like, realistically, you don't need this thing to do much, but you could maybe say, "Give me some recommendations," and it'll do that. But then you can get a lot more thorough because that's the cool thing about AI right now is that you can speak to it like a human, damn near, and it'll give you a human answer. So like. You could say, I really like this year's Call of Duty Black Ops. Is there any other multiplayer games that are like that have this exact mode? And then it would spit out like a game for you of like I've searched the directory, I've searched the store. Here is an FPS game. It has a similar mode, pulls Metacritic scores. I mean, contextually, that's what it could do.
I'm also thinking maybe that this AI assistant would also be able to help you in the game. So if there's a puzzle you're stuck on, which let's face it, it happens. People don't want to admit it all the time, but you go in a circle and you've been on this thing for 15 minutes. You're like, can I just get past this? Maybe the little guy pops up like, hey, what's going on over here?
An Astrobot walks in.
He's like, what's going on over here? I like the idea of them just popping their head in through like the side of the screen and looking at you. Like, hey, what's going on in here? How we doing?
That'd be a little trippy.
15 minutes. And you keep walking past the obvious answer. You don't. Can I help you with it though? Like I like the idea of them just like casually making you feel like an idiot while they fix it for you.
I'm pretty sure the company has like a ton of patents relating to actually specifically that game help in general. Because it's already a thing on PlayStation. Like the groundwork is there on this console. If anything, like a lot of ideas that they're attempting to flesh out on this machine is just like maybe too early for what it could look like. I have no doubt in my mind that's probably a part of it too. That'll be.
I wouldn't be shocked if next gen we get our DualSense controller or whatever they call it, right? And you press a little button, this microphone button, you press and hold, and it makes a little boop thing, and you just talk to it, and it's just there. It is. That's it. It's all easy. It's quick. No issues. So I don't know. Would that feel? I mean, at this point, I've thought about this. I don't really think about load times much anymore. It's ingrained now. It's like, oh yeah, of course that this level's going to start up immediately.
That's the thing that I feel like everybody is now, they've immediately taken that for granted.
Yep.
It's like a lot of complaining about this generation. And it's like, well, let's slow our roll here. Like we're all enjoying like one of the coolest things about this gen. Well, can we not forget that like load times are like gone? Let's not. I love it. Because I can't stand.
Go back to the PS4 right now and play a couple games off there, and you're just like, wait, this thing is loading.
I love my PlayStation 3, but and I do play it often. When I go, John, those load times, man, they're tough.
Look at this load screen. Like, what is this?
They're brutal. So I filmed a lot of PS2 stuff recently. Same thing. Oof. You want to read this disc a little faster? God forbid it's a CD game. CD games are awful.
Oh yeah,
PS2 is working his ass off reading that CD.
You can hear it; it's going crazy,
loud as hell. Like, let's not forget that like load times are basically not a thing anymore. In most games, there's some PS5 games like it's taking a while.
Yeah, but I'd say the vast majority of them, if you get a loading screen, the bar just jumps pretty quick, so it's almost immediate.
Well, that's the thing, because now it's like I'm getting stingy here. Like I'm like, wow, this was like 8 seconds. That's come on, let's get this show on the road here.
Next, I'm going to use an actual DualSense controller. I only use Edge controllers around here, sir.
Yeah, I love hedonism. All right. Okay, so the handheld though, and handheld rumor. I have no doubt in my mind that they've always been messing with, toying with, R&Ding like local play handhelds. The thing is always, will they release it? I think in this environment nowadays, you're talking about Nintendo's done very well. Portable PCs are very relevant. And now Microsoft is entering that landscape too. Like PlayStation's pretty bad. I don't think you want to be the only player here that doesn't have this, right?
Right.
The only thing I'm very curious about is positioning, because it's not like they're going to release this thing tomorrow, and they probably can't if it's going to play PlayStation 5 games. If we're talking about thermals, battery life, and making the thing not obscenely expensive. You release it late life cycle PlayStation 5. That's right before PlayStation 6. Is this thing going to play PS6 games? Is it only PS5? What does it look like? What does it cost? Positioning, I think, is maybe the more awkward spot.
Yeah, I kind of feel like they could drop this a year before the PS6 comes out, and they could still make it work with let me think. We're talking about this PS4 cross-gen period. It's still going, by the way. We're going to get 2026 games on the PS4. How long do you think that cross-gen period is going to be between the PS5 and the PS6? Like, that's going to be
very long.
Yeah. So let's say this handheld comes out in 2027. We'll just throw that out there, right? A year before the PS6, we believe, comes out. Honestly, if they get like 5 years out of this thing, and it's in like 2031, 2032, the PS5 might still be getting games. That might be a thing. So I feel like this handheld could actually have a pretty good life running these games that are cut down. Now, I think the bigger question is, can AMD figure it out? Because Valve has said with the Steam Deck, the reason they haven't done anything like a generationally, there isn't one right now. The AMD's still trying to figure it out. And Valve, to their credit, helped develop the Steam Deck chipset. So Sony will have to come in and work with AMD to figure it out. But it's this tightrope that you're walking. You're threading this needle between performance, battery life, thermals, and then just overall size of the thing. Because while we see these handhelds now, let's face it, the Vita is classic. It still looks modern.
It's hot.
But if they tried to make something comparable now, it's going to look like a Steam Deck. It's going to be this big thing.
Exactly. I expect that if Sony ends up doing it, like, they're going to want to product design this thing like a PlayStation product. It's not going to be it's not going to look like a Steam Deck. They're going to want this thing to look pretty sleek and something you're proud to own. And that comes directly in conflict with like making a Steam Deck, basically.
Right. So I feel like the Portal is functional in the way it looks. And as we talked about, it wasn't, I don't think Sony was looking at that as being this massive seller or anything. And I have to imagine they even gave them a smaller like budget for it and stuff. And it's worked out so far. But if they take a swing at a handheld, it's not like the PlayStation Portal budget. It's going to be like legit R&D. Let's make the full chip. Let's do it. Let's get the ecosystem set up for it. And let's make it look good, and it's tough. It is that situation of it's going to be fast, good looking, or inexpensive, and it's like pick two. That's kind of it. So I will tell you this. I hope it comes to market, because I think if anything, Sony showing up in this space would only be good, like across the board. Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, all competing finally in a comparable market, because they're all kind of scattered right now. Nintendo's like, oh, we're doing our Blue Ocean thing. Sony's, no, we're making a box and it's high end and it's going to go alongside of that enthusiast market. And then Microsoft is like, I don't know. They're doing something.
Here's our games. This is an Xbox.
They're doing something with it, right? But they all feel like they're off on these own paths. And I kind of want them to come back and just crash into each other again, because then we get the competition. We get the competition. We get better products. We've seen that in the past. And I kind of want to see that in the handheld space, because that is a market that I think has a ton of potential, with these lower power chips doing some incredible stuff right now. Apple, as much as people like to dunk on Apple, man, I got to tell you, I'm working on a Mac Mini video. Dude, this thing is crazy. There's no way it should be doing what it's doing right now at the price point.
Apple Silicon.
Dude, there's no way it should be doing that kind of stuff. I'm playing Death Stranding and like Resident Evil Village on this, and it's at like 1440p and running like good frame rate on these low power chips. It's wild stuff. So clearly the potential's there if they are willing to put the R&D into it. And I think you got Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo fighting it out. Nvidia is kind of over here. Apparently, they're going to make their own all-in-one chip to compete with AMD. Future's bright if they all dump the money into it. And I'm hoping they do.
Oh yeah, it'll be a fascinating thing to see play out.
Do you, Ryan? Do you bring back the Vita name?
No,
you just leave that thing for dead. No, sir.
It'll probably have some like standalone name, basically.
Do you just call it the PlayStation Portal? The portable, PlayStation Portable, PSP. The 6 on the PS6 flips around.
I hope not. I hope
PSP,
not.
PS6, do either one.
I don't know what they'd call it. It would probably be a standalone name like the Portal. It just wouldn't be, it'd be PlayStation something.
Yeah. PlayStation would obviously be like start with PlayStation. I don't know. They've used PSP Go. They used the Go name. They used Vita, which Vita was kind of random, I guess. That was just like, oh, Vita, cool.
I mean, but it could be like PS5 Go or PS6 Go, or again, depends on positioning,
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it would be a strong enough push where it'd have its own name and its own presence. I don't know if you want to name it after your console necessarily.
Well, you do want to let people know that it, like, very clearly, this will play your PS5 games.
You're right. It could be PS5 Go. That'd be very straightforward.
That's
PS4,
I don't know.
PS5 portable.
Yeah. Like, I'm curious as to what the next iteration of Portal will be named, if it'll just stay Portal and then like they discontinue the old one, or if they want to have two of them sitting next to each other. So there's a few ways.
The year on it, right? Like PlayStation Portal 2026 or something.
Yeah, I mean, there's that. I mean, like, navigating Apple stuff's always ridiculous because like they used to just call it generations. Then they would just do, oh, this is the iPad late 2014, iMac late 2012 or something. So depends on how they want to approach it.
Portal 4K. 4K screen in there.
Do you really need a 4K screen on a Portal?
Hey, they pushing that streaming quality. Why not? Let me see that 10-inch screen.
The thing is, like, if this thing comes, it'll be like a very big, like, that's the thing. You got to do a big display. It will not be a Vita screen, like, probably ever again, I imagine.
No, it would probably be like an 8-inch, just maybe 7. I don't know. The Switch OLED's a 7. Yeah, 7-inch screen seems to be like kind of the sweet spot for a lot of these devices, like the ROG Ally, I believe. They have higher refresh rates too. They'll target like 120 hertz and stuff.
Yeah. You can't make it any smaller because then, like, certain games they don't look right with like on-screen text. That's like, can't even read it.
You're right.
So either way, it seems like we do have a new PlayStation Portable in the pipeline.
Exciting stuff. Looking forward to it. Which, hey, if they dropped it in 2027, we might start actually hearing it coming together like late 2026. So
yeah, I mean, if this thing's coming sooner than PS6, more rumors will start popping up for that.
Probably. A couple just 2 years off maybe from actually like hearing it, seeing factory leaks. Or exciting times.
Another way to play Jack 2.
Hey, there it is.
I was very disappointed that the image quality enhancement on Pro didn't do anything to Jack 2. Bastards.
Need that PS5 Pro patch for it. Come on, Sony, set it up.
Needs a native PS5 version. All right, let's get into big acquisition rumor. Sony is interested in acquiring Kadokawa. This was initially reported by Reuters. Early discussions are ongoing for Sony acquiring Kadokawa, the parent company of many game studios, but also big anime giant. They also are a majority stakeholder in From Software. So just one day later, Kadokawa did confirm the reports by issuing a statement that the company has received an initial letter of intent from Sony to acquire the company's shares. Now, letter of intent actually means like this is probably in the advanced stages of discussion. So it's not like, oh, this is like the first pass. Like, this is probably happening to some degree. Bloomberg then followed this up with a report from Takashi Mochizuki claiming that the acquisition interest between the two has always been there. I guess the actual issue is that Kadokawa wants just the whole organization to be scooped up, whereas Sony wants to pick them apart, which that report just came out. I'll tell you, when I read that, I was like, that makes so much sense to me. That makes so much sense to me because Sony wouldn't want everything. They just wouldn't.
Right.
So for one, like in terms of game studios, right? Kadokawa has Spike Chunsoft, Gotcha Games, Acquire. They also mentioned like on the like recent financial reports, they've got 20 games in development on console. And 6 more on mobile from Kadokawa Games and VIC Game Studios. I'm telling you right now, Sony doesn't want that shit. They don't want 20-something console games. They don't want it. Like they're a very boutique company. Like they care about PlayStation Studios, the kind of titles they put out. They very likely do want From alongside all the anime stuff, which we'll talk about in a second here. But just to give that breakdown, right? So Sony owns 14% of Kadokawa. They've invested in the studio directly. That was 2 years ago. They also, I think, have a 2% stake in Kadokawa overall. So they're already invested in Kadokawa. They've got some in From Software. Tencent has 16%, and then Kadokawa has 70%. So From is like kind of owned between all three, but it's just that's the sort of company hierarchy. The other quick thing to mention here is that From Software did get the rights back to Elden Ring. So in terms of IP ownership, they do have Elden Ring. They don't have Dark Souls. So that's something to consider as well.
You think I'm almost wondering if the way Sony would look at this, and maybe the hang up, as you mentioned, has been they don't want everything, but Tencent's very much involved. I almost wonder if we end up hearing about this deal and it's like Sony gets this, Tencent gets this, and they do still figure out a way to split it up. Because you're right, if Sony has to leave with all the stuff with Kadokawa, I am curious what they do with it. Do they just start shutting stuff down and moving pieces around? And
exactly.
I don't know how it works in Japan, because in Japan, I know there's the discussion of you can't just lay people off just willing, like just out of nowhere, laying all these people off. There's like a whole process, and you have to basically prove that your company's going to go insolvent if you don't lay them off or something. And Sony's not going to be able to prove that after just buying them for billions of dollars. So I'm not sure what they would do then. I guess they'd have to see the projects through and just be like, well, we really wanted this for distribution of anime, and we really wanted FromSoft. And Spike is they just did Sparking Zero, and that's a good game. So like they're good studios there, up and down that tree. Acquire, that's another good one. So I mean that's actually a pretty good amount of talent to also add in Japan, where, as we've talked about, the yen is weaker. It's cheaper to develop games there in Japan. So that all seems to add up. FromSoft is the prize, though. I know the anime I know that comes up, but like, come on, one of the investors, I think Bloomberg said it, like joked, like Miyazaki's worth like a third of the entire deal on his own, just because of what he's able to do. FromSoft's at an all-time high right now. If the Kadokawa family, apparently, that was more involved before, isn't as involved now, and it's like, let's sell at the all-time high for FromSoft, because look, I know Armored Core 6 did well. Elden Ring 2, or whatever they do with follow-up, it's a steep mountain to climb, right? So you're playing the odds. You're like, this might be the most valuable FromSoft is going to be. Let's see if we can make a deal. Let's do it.
Yeah, it was interesting watching this news come out, and like immediately, like a big reaction to it was like, oh, it's the anime. No doubt absolutely anime plays a big role, and there's a lot to be said about, how much alignment there is with Sony's position with anime, because Sony Music and Aniplex, they're very well established. Picking up Crunchyroll really sealed the deal for them in terms of like the sort of foothold they have in that market. I won't act like an expert in the anime field, because it's really different in terms of like how the content is made, distributed. Same with like mangaka that have more leverage for negotiation. And so in terms of like IP ownership, that's where Sony is, I guess, lacking in this department. Again, it's something I'm not really an expert in. Just that there's obviously concerns with like how much anime stuff Sony has. So that does play a role. But to undermine like that From Software isn't part of this equation, I think we're just being silly. Absolutely, they want From Software. But here's the weird, awkward part about it, John, is that because like historically, right? I mean, you can look at this and it tracks with how Sony has always done acquisitions, long-standing partners. If you look up From Software's like portfolio, it's a lot of PlayStation.
It is
between the Kingsfield games, going into Demon Souls, Bloodborne, even doing like PSVR with Diracine. They did like 3 PS2 launch titles. Those were all exclusive. The Armored Core games, were birthed on PlayStation. Like it's a lot. I mean, a lot of PlayStation. But the thing is, the last big exclusive here, Diracine was PSVR 1 in 2018. Nobody cared about that, obviously. But, Bloodborne was 2015, right?
Yep.
It's very different nowadays. Like Bloodborne was big, no doubt. Demon Souls sort of birthed the Souls franchise, but that was PS3. Culturally, like From is in this like different landscape now with Elden Ring. So it'll be very fascinating in that this is like I don't want to say typical, but like it's a PlayStation partner. It's the kind of acquisition that would have, in a way, always made sense. But it's like to do it now, and they're so beloved for what is a big multi-platform game, that would be fascinating to see play out.
You think they'd leave? So obviously Miyazaki would have ultimate pull. Like you'd be able to. I mean, we talk about Neil Druckmann, for example, at Naughty Dogs. Like, do what you want.
Yeah.
I mean, you're giving that kind of a pass to Miyazaki, I assume. He's walking in and they basically have his name up on the wall already, right?
Yeah.
I almost wonder if he would look at him and be like, look, my next project is multi-platform. I don't know what to tell you.
So here's the thing. I don't think Sony would make their next game exclusive.
No, because I'm looking at what happened with Destiny and like Marathon and stuff too, right? Just as an example of a recent acquisition.
Yeah. I mean, like Bungie is still like an outlier in a sense, but I don't know. This, I just look at it and I'm like, Sony's not dumb. They understand the position of the studio nowadays. They know I mean, a game that ships what did Elden Ring ship now? 25 million or something?
Yeah, it's more than 20 million.
So yeah, and it's obviously known to be multi-plat. They wouldn't make Elden Ring too exclusive. And no, they would not. I don't think they would time gap it from console and PC either. I think they would let From do its thing. Because the other thing about this news, and like I get it, right? This news gets funneled into, sort of core audiences, so like FromSoft fans and PC fans and things, and they might not know how Sony has historically done business, but like they don't intervene with creative, the creative process. Like as long as the studio can deliver, they let the studio do their own thing. And in this case, I feel like they are fully understanding of what From Software is nowadays. Now, if they like, let's say, did a Bloodborne 2, and it's a known console,
well, yeah,
IP,
that would make sense. Yeah,
I mean, maybe that would be the sort of standard formula of PlayStation exclusive first, and then maybe PC. Because we're still expecting Demon Souls to come to the remake, I should say, to come to PC at some point, which still has not happened yet. But
what do you think the odds are of Ninja Blade coming over to PlayStation finally?
And Ninja Blade, huh?
Ninja Blade.
Classic
Xbox 360 FromSoft game.
I'm thinking maybe it's a good premium candidate. Put it up on the server blades there.
That game's still not backwards compatible either.
Oh yeah,
it's still just stuck on the 360, and I think even Windows. I feel like
one
on Steam.
Is that like the 1 360 with it?
I feel like they pulled that down. Nah, it's not even on 360. So it's not on Steam, from what I remember. It's on. I have it on the 360, and it's a hilarious game because there's so many QuickTime events. But it is this it's what people forget. Some of the weird games FromSoft used to make. Like there's this weird thing where they're just like this. They black out anything before like Dark Souls or something. It's like no, FromSoft made some weird and at times just bad games back then. But Ninja Blade always. I remember that game so well back then.
Yeah, if you go from 94 to 2001. It's all PlayStation. Yeah, then they started doing some Xbox here and there. They got a DS game. I remember Cookies and Cream. That was weird. Cookies and Cream. They did Koan too. That super expensive PS2 game.
I need like that FromSoft collection to come out.
I really do. I need some of this old stuff. Yeah.
Put on a collection. This is going to be interesting to watch because it sounds like it's actually been in the works for a long time. We're closer to the finish line than I think people were expecting just based on this Bloomberg report. I wouldn't be shocked if before the end of this year, that press release goes out and it's done.
So like the letter of intent is huge. Like
Yeah.
as far as I understand it, like a letter of intent is not like we just started talking about this thing. It's like, we're pretty far and, a decision hasn't been made. And they probably had put it out there because they were like blindsided by the report. Because like initially, right when the report came out, shares start going up for
It messed up
for cut it.
plans. Yes.
Yeah.
It
And
messed it
then
up.
that makes them more expensive now. So it's I can't say I'm surprised. I mean, there's just so much alignment between these two companies.
Yeah. So no, I would expect the next big FromSoft game to still be on Xbox, still be on PC and stuff. In fact, they might be like, hey, we were trying to get this thing on the Switch too. We're still doing that, right? And so, yeah, put it everywhere. We want to sell 30 million this time. I don't think, like you said, Sony's not dumb in this case. They would like to make money for something like this. So
they would like to make money. Yeah, the thing is too, like that the company knows they've got such a good stranglehold on like the high end console space. Like, and it's like a finite number in a sense. If they've got a pretty big chunk of the pie already, making a big game like Elden Ring 2 exclusive to PlayStation isn't going to somehow make that number any bigger. Like to grow means you have to ship on other consoles. So it might like seem weird if like we get to 4 years later and they own From completely, maybe they buy out 10-cent shares, whatever the case is, but they get integrated into PS Studios, new Elden Ring, and it's multi-plat right away. Well, it's a different environment nowadays, but it doesn't surprise me at all with them wanting to pick apart the company. They probably don't. No. Yeah, they don't want gotcha games. They probably don't care about Spike. It doesn't align with what SIE has done with studios. What would they do with these teams? They
have to figure out something. I don't think we can get rid of them.
They said 20 games in development. Sony doesn't want all this stuff. They don't. They do care about what they make and ship.
Yeah. Well, they might just kill some of the projects and figure out something else for them to do. I guess I don't know.
Oh, I would think that like they would like From would go to SIE. It would be a PS Studio.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
The other stuff, which they can't necessarily just close after the acquisition, would probably just go to Sony Music and Sony Aniplex. So like they would still have them and own them, and like that would be their new business vertical that they have to deal with. But like they keep it away from PlayStation. Like they do keep Spike Chunsoft and Gotcha, but they're managed not by SIE. I almost feel like that's a possibility too. So
I'm interested. See what happens.
We will see what happens. That's a big one though. That is a big one. If you're going to spend a few $1 billion, that's probably where it should go. Not to say I
30th anniversary is coming up.
Yeah. Not to say I really agree with super big consolidation like that, but if we're talking about what makes sense for Sony, that one certainly does.
Yeah, and it seems like Kadokawa's going to Sony even. Like, yeah, what are you want to buy us or?
Yeah, it seems like the missing context is like these companies want to sell.
Yeah,
they want to go. So if it's not Sony, they might go somewhere else. And
like people bring up the Activision thing. Activision went to Microsoft.
If you care about From Software's output, you want them to go to a home that gives them creative output or creative agency. So with that in mind, more multi-platform hardware maker news. Microsoft CEO of gaming, Phil Spencer. Phil spoke with Bloomberg recently, discussed how they are open to more acquisitions, including maybe some with geographic diversity. They also say that they're working on a handheld, but it's years away. And they also talk about releasing games on PlayStation and Nintendo. He said they're pleased with the results so far and that they will do more of that, going on to say, and I quote, "I do not see sort of red lines in our portfolio that say, thou must not." So this entire time we've been talking about how, yes, they're doing more multi-platform stuff, but like for us, the big question is like, when's like the bit, like a real big Xbox IP going to go over? That's when like the sort of seal gets broken, so to speak. I think Phil just broke it right there. I think that's the man saying like, yeah, you're going to see probably a Forza or Halo show up eventually.
I think Forza's next. I still think Horizon 5 might just do it, just test the waters. Just why not? It's a racing game that doesn't, I mean, I guess like there's There's the Crew Motor Fest, which is kind of closer to it. It's not like a Gran Turismo. It's more arcadey. So it's like, why not just throw this open world, fun racing game that's already proven itself, that has a name, put it on PlayStation? Because Sea of Thieves made them decent money. They seem pretty happy with that launch. So I think you're just going to see more and more of these games pop up. And I'm waiting for it to not be news anymore that this is happening. And it just seems like it still is for some reason. Maybe once these games really start getting announced and it's just a constant thing, and it's like, well, yeah, of course Halo's coming at some point. It won't look, when Halo gets announced, that will be a big deal, but like just in general, every time Phil has an interview, it's like, oh my gosh, no red lines, Xbox games are coming. It's like, yeah, I mean, it seems like it's working for him. They're making money. And in fact, I think the thing that's going to happen over the next couple of years, we're going to look back on this and be like, wow, Microsoft actually did end up turning into the biggest publisher in gaming. I think people are failing to realize that they're going to start reporting some of these numbers. Like Call of Duty was massive for them. It was crazy how big Call of Duty was this year, especially in the US where it was reported. I think in like 3 or 4 years, Ryan, we're going to look back and Microsoft's going to be reporting numbers bigger than any company in gaming right now. Anyone, PlayStation, Nintendo, everybody. I think it's just like they have these properties. They're all hitting. They're releasing on PlayStation. They're releasing on Nintendo. And they just gross revenue wise, not like consoles sold or anything. I think it's going to be hard to match that. Like when you have a Call of Duty just sitting there and a Forza, and you have Bethesda releasing games, and it's just, there's so much hitting all at once.
You're not wrong. 100%. It's in a way, I'm like annoyed with these stories too. It's like, I think we're all picking up what we're laying down, but it's just going to be every little ounce of here's another one. Here's another one. I think it's going to be a while for it to feel normal, or at least for these stories to stop popping up.
Yeah. So. It's, I don't know. It'd be interesting because those reports will come out and it'll look like it all makes sense then, I guess, but it's strange in the here and now, I guess, for people, because we're all so used to sell a box, put games on it. They're only on that system, build up the IP to be known next to that box, like Halo with Xbox, something like that. And then that's how you make money. And Microsoft is doing some weird stuff right now. So they're the social media manager tweeted out this is an Xbox and it's a PlayStation 5. And it's like, this is weird times, man.
Then he had to follow it up with like, guys, chill.
Yeah, I'm just playing around. This is funny, but you know how it goes.
That ad campaign was pretty funny though. I'm like, oh, okay. This is an Xbox. This is an Xbox. This is an Xbox.
It was strange stuff. It's strange.
Turns out, John, we're all an Xbox. It's actually about all the Xboxes we became Xboxes along the way.
Yep, along the way.
Let's go into some SIE news. This came out today. Today, after 31 years with the company, SIE's indie initiative man and the former head of Worldwide Studios, Shuhei Yoshida, is leaving in January. 31 years. Now, this is like a slight little PSX, going to give it to you. Shuhei is a PlayStation OG. I mean, the man was there at the very beginning of what was Sony Music, basically. Mm-hmm. So it was like a weird joint collaboration with that first initial department, him, Ken, a few other executives that started up the PlayStation brand. And man, Shuhei's got such a crazy like time in this industry. Like he was pretty well known. He became like a sort of social media darling during the PS4 cycle. So that's where he became much more known. And the company that was probably the peak as far as like when Sony was sort of the fun social media company.
They're interacting.
And they were personality driven. Like folks probably know this because there's like crossover with viewership, but like, they were always hanging out with like, at the time they were at IGN, but Greg and Colin, and always doing interviews. And, Shuhei was just being funny on Twitter, and his account blew up for just having silly responses to fans. And he's just the senior position ranking person at Sony, like running like side customer service. And there would be like the funny anecdotes where it's like, can I get a job at Sony? And he'd be like, no.
Hey, didn't waste their time.
Didn't waste their time. He's such a likable person. He's genuinely passionate about the business. He's one of those people. He plays games. He loves games. I think I don't want to say the writing was like on the wall, but it's like when he kind of stepped down, and he wanted to step down from sort of I would imagine stress levels of like, traveling to all the different studios and really managing larger budget games. He wanted to sort of get back down to, sort of the nitty gritty of indies nowadays, which he's super passionate about. And he did say he's leaving, but he's not like retiring.
I noticed that one.
Yeah, which I think that's not really alarming. I mean, 31 years anywhere, at a certain point, I mean, it's 31 years. No matter what reason he has for leaving, like, it's 31 years. It was going to happen.
I mean, he's 60 now, I think, right?
He's up there. I don't know. I think he is 60.
60s.
Yeah.
So he's not like, people retire like 65 to 70, somewhere in there. He does still, I think, still have a couple of years in him. And I'm like, in terms of like being in the workforce or doing stuff like that. And I am curious if, as he mentioned, like, look, I've been here so long. It's it did sound like he was trying to explain, we're about to start up the next generation behind the scenes. People, I trust people here. They're doing their thing. They got it. I admire them. It's in good hands.
Yeah.
It almost feels like there's something out there that he knows he has like this window of opportunity now before he does indeed retire. I almost wonder what that is, because you mentioned he's saying he's leaving, not retiring. And I don't know if that in his mind, because did you notice in the interview, the thing he brought up, they were like, what's a moment in gaming that it's very memorable to you? He talked about Journey winning Game of the Year 2012 at the DICE Awards.
He brings that up a lot.
Yeah, and it's like that's the thing. Not all these other big AAA games you guys launched that won Game of the Year at the big prestigious shows and stuff, like with the confetti from the ceiling of the trophies. I like Journey. It's like 12 years ago. That's the one I remember the most. It makes me wonder if he's just going to go off and like consult at indie studios, be a consultant for that. Somebody brought up the idea of him going to Microsoft or Nintendo. I'm like, I think he's like Team Blue. Like, I think he's got some loyalty there. I don't know if he's just going to run off to another big company like that. I kind of feel like he's just going to almost travel around as his own little consultancy thing and just go check out indie games. It's kind of what it feels like to me.
I would agree. If we're talking about just the sort of trend with anybody that does this for that long, it's like if they're still working, it seems like that's the token job. They go into consulting. But it's something like that. Or, I mean, he said he's staying in the industry. A lot of the time, these guys will like get out of they'll go to a completely different industry because they've just got the money to do it and just sort of start venturing into other passions or something, right? Like, was it Peter Moore or somebody like left and went into like football or something? Yeah. I can't even remember. It's
basketball,
some little anecdote. Yeah. But either way, yeah, Shuhei, big stuff. I was going to say something. I forgot already. It's probably something related to just PlayStation history. Yeah, you should. Something about Shuhei. Either way, it's big stuff.
Do you see? Mentioned that he was. Oh, go ahead.
No, so your point about the positioning of when he's leaving, that's very common too. Like Jim Ryan leaving, he's probably leaving right before. He's not going to sign up for another PlayStation 6. There's always like opportune times for leadership turnover to happen. Like Andy House left at an opportune time. Very common. So you're right about that too.
The other thing you mentioned was he's OG in PlayStation, and he's talking about like the early days when they launched the thing and they were like 80 people in a hotel room or something, like celebrating. That's how small they like tons of people like just coming in and out of this hotel room as like a celebration thing because they were still so small back then. And it's interesting for him to reflect on that and then see where PlayStation is now. And he witnessed this in 30 years time. It's crazy stuff.
There's probably very few people on this planet that has that kind of experience of like, I was there at the beginning for this very tiny thing that became a global phenomenon. So that's
expensive consultation then.
There'd be a lot to hear Shuhei's words.
Right. Okay. What's the how long do you think it's going to take until he shows up in a picture in Kojima's White Room with the
he's already been there, hasn't he?
He's going to go again, right? He gets done. He's
again.
Obviously he's going to make another trip, right?
He's going to sign the wall again.
Make the trip. How long? I think we see that picture before March, April.
What's the over under on this?
Well, he's out in January, so I feel like a month or two later, Kojima's gonna be like with Shuhei. There he is in the room.
Maybe, maybe we'll get a picture of him with Reggie Fils-Aimé first.
Oh, him and Sakurai maybe in a picture. I was
Maybe.
picturing like him making the rounds and going to see everybody.
Yeah, just like hanging out with everybody. He's probably gonna have some time in between, I imagine. So
Yeah.
we have less exciting SIE news though. So SIE has appointed Olivier Courtemanche as the head of PlayStation Studios Mobile and Justin Kubiak as head of mobile business development and partnerships. Now, Courtemanche was previously the co-head next to Chris Davis. He still has that role listed on his LinkedIn, so I'm not sure what's going on there. So it might be a 2 CEOs setup, but that's what it was before. Either way, I'm only mentioning this in passing because like it seems very obvious to me that they are having problems getting this mobile division established. Because we went from like bringing in the Apple Arcade guy, buying a studio renamed, studio closed, changing leadership again. This division's probably just having some issues getting off the ground.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just they're having a hard time just developing that loop that fits in with PlayStation Studios. I don't know, something's going on. I know they so desperately want to find their way into this sector because we talked about the Pokemon. We kicked that back and forth. The Pokemon card game that came out, right? That's a recent example of. They were like, "Oh yeah, we made $120 million on that already." It's like, what? What? Really? I know it's Pokemon. I know it's cards. It's so easy to fit that together. I get it, but still, it shows the potential of the kind of money you can make if you just even have a simple idea like that. Like, we're not dealing with them trying to make some, big budget AAA looking platformer action style game. It's like, no, it's just cards. You're just collecting them. Just give us money. That's it. And is that what it is? It's like just digital goods. Just give us money now. And people are buying into that left, right, and center. And it's even with that, it's pretty good about giving you booster packs. So I think Sony needs to, I mean, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes there. The one thing that they mentioned that was like canceled before with the studio they shut down was like, yeah, it's like this action adventure game. And I'm thinking, just conform for the first one to like some kind of gotcha game with your own IP and come up with something there. I don't know. It's just, I almost wonder if they're shooting too high for their first real entry for mobile.
Maybe. You would think they want to just like really like hammer down the concept of doing mobile right, which is not what they've done in consoles because they shouldn't do it that way. And it's just hard to break into, I guess. I don't know. Like they're hiring the right talent too. They're not hiring the wrong people per se. I almost feel like maybe it's just a clash in leadership and figuring out this is how we need to do it, right? Because this is the very first iteration of stepping into mobile with this like big, because they've done mobile before, but they've obviously brought in fresh people to look at this segment, and maybe they're just clashing it as far as how they should go about doing certain things. I don't know.
That's tough. We won't know until we see their first entry or first game from them, and who knows when that'll happen. So
we don't know if it'll be a new IP, if they want to like lean on existing properties, and how do you take that existing IP and bake it into mobile. We've seen, examples of that. Run, Sackboy, Run, but it's like, okay, it's 2020, 2024. We're not going to do an endless runner, guys. Like we got to do something else. And what is that?
You got to use an established IP, I assume, right? I mean, you might as well. You have a treasure trove of them that Sony doesn't even want to look at right now.
Yeah, but are any of those like going to really be able to be a mobile runoff success? I mean, like some of them are big, right? Like Last of Us is huge. God of War is huge. What do you do with that on mobile?
That's what they're having a hard time figuring out. Is what do you do with that?
Maybe that illustrates the point. Maybe that's exactly the problem.
That's tough. Yeah.
Well, either way, it'll be a long time until you play a PlayStation Studios mobile game.
Yeah, but years.
I would say so.
Do you think this division first? Do you think this division ever releases a game?
Yeah, you would hope so.
You think so? I mean, I don't know. I don't know if
unless
Sony sees this going on. It's like, hold on a minute. Maybe mobile isn't our thing.
just exit. I mean,
I don't know.
I would think that's not entirely outside the realms of possibility, but like it's almost like a requirement from them now. You can't not do it.
Push something.
Yeah, you have to try and do something. So I would think we're still years away. Just like Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3. So we have some news here. Speaking at G-Star 2024, director Naoki Hamaguchi talked about how for the third entry, the team is not going to cheat with the high wind airship. I thought this was funny because he basically wanted to let people know, like, we're not going to like do some developer tricks and not really give you access to what that thing is supposed to be, which is flying around the map. So basically just acknowledge that. They also talked about this, or they talked in a conversation with Daily Star that Rebirth is not getting any DLC. They're looking to work on the third game, get that out as quickly as possible, which they did clarify that the plot and concept is already completed and development is well underway, I should say. That to me reads as we want to maybe get this thing out the door in 3 years, maybe. Because like a lot of elements of Rebirth is exactly what will be in the third game. You know, remake to Rebirth was 4 years. That also had the integrated DLC. I almost think they're actually in a very decent spot to maybe get this thing out in 2027.
Yeah, because they've also built a lot of the, like in Rebirth, a lot of landscapes were already built. They've done a lot to then, I assume, open this up into full open world. I think that's kind of what they're describing, right? With the airship basically flying around. And because with Rebirth, it's kind of like open zone, basically. Like you have areas that are open, but it's not all interconnected easily. So I'm kind of thinking, no, now you're able to fly wherever you want, whenever you want in real time. It's not going to cheat it. So I kind of think this is a 2027 game, is what I would assume. A year before the next generation starts, which of course means they'll want to release a PS6 version of this game and probably all the others. I almost wonder if they'll try to pack this thing together in a trilogy pack. And here's a PS6 game, and just they like to resell the stuff. Let's be real. But the idea is get it out 3 years, 2027, complete the trilogy on the PS5, right? So we'll have all of them available there on the system because they did integrate or whatever. And man, who would have thought it would have gone like this when we first saw Final Fantasy VII getting revealed back in the day? But here we are. You're going to start Rebirth soon?
I'm trying really hard because I do not want to be in a spot where I'm letting the game sit that long. So I'm hoping like over either the holiday like weekend going into the new year, or maybe like shortly, like sometime in January where it cools down, I'll have time to, because I know it's going to be like a 100-hour game for me. So I'm hoping to start it.
Or are you
soon.
trying to get the platinum?
So that's the funny thing, right? Is I didn't know this, but he also said that they're going to make the third game not as hard to platinum.
The platinum's probably north of 200 hours.
Oh my God. Is it really? God damn it.
Yeah.
Bastards. Don't these Square, come get your shit. Don't you know people just want like minimum playthroughs? Don't do.
There's a couple people I know that got the platinum and they were like, yeah, I think like 230 hours. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh my.
I spent about right around 100 hours in this game.
These guys got to, all right. Well, either way, I will hopefully start Rebirth soon. We'll talk about it on Click R3 too, since I'll finally be able to.
That'd be cool. Yeah, you'll have to let me know how it goes for you.
Say something about the game finally.
You play on the Pro though.
Oh, I'll be playing. That's the hey, waiting pays off. Waiting pays off. You think I want to play Vaseline Rebirth? No, thank you.
Hey, I did.
So there's that to look forward to. You know what's funny? I almost feel like too, because we still don't know what sort of deal they have with SIE. I almost feel like it's also maybe a slight amount of corporate pressure from Square to be like, no DLC, release it. Because whatever sort of contingency they have for like, once the final game is out, then there's an amount of time that has to pass for them to then monetize it further. It's like the longer they wait to get the final game out, the longer it'll be for them to monetize it again. So
yeah, we saw what Square's like big initiative now is basically we're going multi-platform across the board as much as possible. So you're right. I bet you they get this thing out there, and then somehow 366 days later, here's the Xbox version, here's the Switch 2 version, here's like the integrated PS6 version or whatever. Like they just go crazy and do more. And you're right, probably that. I mean, we already know Square's going to re-release, so let's be real, but they'll probably push this thing as they'll get the trilogy everywhere and they'll try to sell it all over again. So they'll probably make stupid money from it too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think it's almost a guarantee you're going to see like a big 3 game in one package. I know a buddy who loves Final Fantasy VII. He's not played either of these games because he's like, I'll just wait for all. I'll wait for all 3. So I can't imagine that's like uncommon.
I would be interested in buying that too, even though I already have like remake, integrate even, and then rebirth. I'd be interested in buying like the 3 compendium thing or whatever they call it. It's this big box you get, and that'd be kind of cool. I would pick that up actually. I liked rebirth quite a bit, so I'd be into that.
Yeah, I'm sure it looks it'll look ridiculous too. Like what they're going to charge for it's going to have like a statue and just
probably hundreds of dollars.
Yeah. All right. You want to just move on to this, John? We have some Game of the Year nominees. An update to the official website FAQ for Jeff Keighley's The Game Awards caused a bit of controversy lately. So this was published a few days before the nominees were revealed. It says, and I quote here, "The Game Awards aims to recognize the best creative and technical work each year, irrespective of the format of that content's release. Expansion packs, new game seasons, DLCs, remakes, and remasters are eligible in all categories if the jury deems the new creative and technical work to be worthy of a nomination." It's important to note that the jury was aware of this information before making their submissions, and so the Game of the Year nominees are Astrobot, Balatro, Black Myth Wukong, Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Metaphor ReFantazio. So this caused a lot of conversation this past week. Why is that?
Well, we have a DLC in here that did not go over well online, and I will admit we all knew when that little passage popped up, the little FAQ edition, which looked really out of place because it was all even rows, and there's like this one little thing down here in the square, and it's like, oh yeah, guys, guess what? DLC can be also remakes and remasters, but DLC too. It's like, okay, we've had remakes; those have been nominated before. We already know that.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is because Shadow of the Erdtree was nominated by the vast majority of jury members, and you're just now realizing you never added that to the website, because I've been told by a couple of people now that was something that was conveyed to people who were nominating stuff months ago. Like they knew that was allowed, and they just never added it to the website, Jeff Keighley and them. So I don't know if they forgot and they were reminded at 0 hour when the nominations came in, and they're like, oh, we didn't add that. Well, we should do that.
Like they expect, like, this is probably going to be a whole ordeal. We should probably put that on the FAQ.
Yeah. So that was nominated, and that's been a whole thing. Does it make sense for DLC to be there when Silent Hill 2 could have been in there? You know, like people were talking about all these other games that could have been Space Marine 2, whatever, right? Like you can pick a number of games now that are in like that mid 80s range that probably could have slotted in. And instead, here's DLC, Shadow of the Erdtree, which the year before, Phantom Liberty, the Cyberpunk expansion that came out, that reworked the entire game and added a really, really good side story and stuff, like a ton of content. That was part of Best Ongoing Game. So for some reason this year, Erdtree is not part of Best Ongoing. It's just part of Game of the Year. But it's something you can only access after playing about 25 hours of Elden Ring and beating a boss that's not even required for the main storyline.
So yeah, so since I haven't played, I actually finally started Elden Ring, but I'm not really.
Oh, good.
I'm not even remotely close to like that, being that deep into it. I wasn't sure if I thought it was like end game you had to get to like access Erdtree.
Not quite end game. It's a boss that you find. It's like, I guess they call it like a secret boss, quote unquote, but it's like a side mission, side quest, side boss or whatever. But it's one that people have been able to get to without, it's hard, but they've been able to get there after like 25 hours or so. You beat them, and then the DLC portal opens up for you. And then the whole world that you get to has like power-ups you find for your summons and for your main character. So they've changed even the leveling system for that because they didn't want people to show up over leveled. But it's not something you just, I'm going to pick this up, I'm going to launch it, and it's just going to go. It's standalone. It's not. It's completely reliant on the 2022 game of the year.
Okay. Yeah, well, that makes sense. I mean, it's this conversation so interesting, right? Because I don't know. Your stance is that it shouldn't be there, right? Or
no, I don't think it should be there. No, I don't think it should be there.
It's I'm more on I'm more on that angle of like, I think this is where you have to like draw like a fine line. Like there has to be specific language and distinctions of like what qualifies and what doesn't. Because like, you know, you can make the case that standalone expansions should be eligible because like you can buy them a la carte and you don't need the base game or something. Or, okay, sure, it's a DLC, but like you can access it immediately. Like let's say, as an example, The Last of Us Left Behind. Like you can just start that. You don't have to get into the base. So it's like getting into the weeds of what exactly should qualify. The thing I think makes sense at least is like, okay, well, at least we now have language of what does qualify, but the language is actually everything. Everything qualifies, which is also not exactly a problem. It's just, I don't know. I think I err more on the side of like maybe something that requires a base game and you have to put a lot of time into it to access it. Maybe doesn't stand on its own in the same manner that obviously other Game of the Year nominees would, you know, how they're positioned. Like it's new content. I understand the access of it's new video game content, and that's why a lot of people submitted it. So I'm not also vehemently against it. I would just probably be more on like the maybe not category.
Yeah. It's funny because if you go to like the PlayStation Store, for example, which I was looking, can't find the thing. Oh yeah, that's right. Because I had full game checked. I'm sorry. Let me uncheck that because it's DLC. It's not even seen as game on the store. It's so strange to me to have DLC in there when there's so many things that you have to figure out. Like I have some friends that aren't really as plugged in. And I'll just text them occasionally from like high school, you know, back in the day. I still keep in touch with them here and there. And it'll sometimes be about games because, you know what, I'm honestly curious what's like the normal opinion on this. Because look, it's hard for us, I think, to get like a zoomed out view because we're so plugged in the weeds, right? And I'm like, yo, Shadow of the Earth Tree got nominated for Game of the Year immediately. That's not a game. What are you talking about? It's so fast. It took no time. They're really into the FromSoft games. They like those games. They like some of the Team Ninja stuff. They like Neo and Neo 2 and any of them really. They get a kick out of them. They're like, that's not DLC. You need Elden Ring to play it. It's like, yeah, okay. So I think it's so interesting because the overwhelming majority of people that I see are like, yeah, that doesn't belong there. So it's so strange to me that it's hard for, I don't know, the Game Awards to figure it out when it's so clear to everyone. Is like, you have 40 some odd categories. Half of them sound unnecessary in the first place. None of these could be best downloadable content or best DLC or best expansion for the year. We get enough of them, I think, to fill it out. And if not, guess what? The fighting game, did you see the fighting game category? Do you know what they nominated?
Oh God, what's in there?
The game that won last year, Multiverses. It's up again. It's nominated again. Why is it nominated again? Because they took the game down and then put it back up this year.
Oh, so you're telling me that's the strat? They could just like delist PlayStation games and then list them again.
Hey, you know what? Anything's on the table. Anything's on the table. You need to get in that Game of the Year now. Get some DLC out the following year. Get it out. So you see hit that bullseye on the dartboard. You never know.
What's funny, John, is I too had like a very sort of casual high school buddy. He just like messaged me straight up. This was unsolicited. He said, I'm going to read what he said verbatim. Because it was, I mean, it's basically what you just said. Vamp, John Vamp. Oh, he said, damn, Shadow of the Erdtree was nomination for Game of the Year. I had no idea a DLC could be Game of the Year, LOL.
No one did. No one did it until they updated that FAQ and everyone was like, what is this? What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not like totally against it because like to play devil's advocate, right? If they're
Mhm.
gonna change, if they're gonna change something, if this is the first time they're ever doing it, that means no matter what, you would have this pushback because it's the first time they're doing it. If this is how
Mm.
it's always going to be from now on, then that means we always know, and that's fine. It's just, I would say probably not. The distinction maybe should be it has to be a little bit more standalone than what Erdtree is doing. But like that's the argument is that, as they say, best creative and technical work each year, irrespective of the format. So if this content was that good that it has to warp and change, then I'm not completely against it. Just I would personally disagree if I was like on the committee here to make an argument. My argument would probably be it shouldn't be there, and let's just do a different category because that's kind of why we have categories.
It's interesting because we also had Destiny 2 release Final Shape, and that reviewed very well. Like better than some of the games that are actually in that category right now, game of the year. And that I didn't hear anybody mention that. Nothing. So unless Shadow of the Erdtree is that incredible for people, which maybe maybe people seem to really like it. I thought it was good. It's more Elden Ring. It is. Like you're like, oh yeah, this is okay. Yeah, this is more Elden Ring.
So that's why that's your stance. You're like, hey, it's good, guys, but I don't know.
I thought the bosses were better in Elden Ring. I think the bosses are definitely better than the base game. Yeah, I thought that was just a better, more interesting piece of content than Shadow of the Erdtree. I know we got to like specify because apparently Elden Ring and Shadow of the Erdtree are the same thing. Didn't know that. So to me, it's good, but it's Elden Ring was when you first start that up, there is that sense of like just you're being there, for the first time. It's like, this is that moment that's going to be very hard to ever replicate again. It's like, people think back to things like, Breath of the Wild one I see gets brought up a lot, right? Or just anything when it comes to Metal Gear Solid from the PS1, it's like these moments in time where it's like this, and this was FromSoft's moment. So when you get the same thing again, it's good, but it's just not that good. It's not that moment where you're like, man, Elden Ring just hit.
So what if you were, let's say you were of the mind where like this was incredible, absolutely insane content, unbelievable. Do you think you would say it should be nominated or
no? Because it's DLC.
Oh, all right. Well, that's very cut and
very
dry.
Straightforward to me. So straightforward to me. It's DLC. It is
very cut and dry.
Because people will ask you, look, you know what happened with Balatro, which people were already questioning that, which is so funny because they did.
Yeah.
And they went off and they got it. They came back and they were like, I'm sorry. This is actually very good. Which is so funny. The sales spiked for Balatro. They made this past week was the most money they've made since it launched on mobile. They made $750,000 in a week, which for the one person who made Balatro, they're very happy with that. But how does that? I don't understand how that would help like it's not going to spike Erdtree sales because they're going to be like, oh wait, I need another game for this thing. This is game of the year. Why does it rely on another game? I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. It just seems weird when you start thinking it through. You're like, I don't get this.
Well, the thing to also consider is that because it's based on a panel, like 90% of like what goes into this is that panel. The fact that it was put up there means it's like a favorite. It's a favorite to win.
Yeah, I got some questions about that panel. I'm sorry, I do. Newsweek gonna tell me what should be nominated for Game of the Year. Okay,
it's like what? It's like over 100 different publications. So it got up there.
Did they put that back up? I got it. Hold on a minute. Hold on. I got to see what that jury looks like.
The list of publications. Yeah, because it wasn't there initially, right? It's there now.
Yeah, I thought they pulled it down, and I think they were just correcting it. I think they were just fixing it.
It's up there now. It's still like primarily legacy media because I definitely was like, look, I'm like, okay, where are the YouTube channels? Where are some like big voices on YouTube? And there's a few like Skill Up's on there, Gamer Ranks is on there.
Yeah, it's okay. I trust Skill Up and Game Ranks. I trust them.
Yeah, well, but that's the thing. It's like, it's still primarily legacy media. They've historically, in recent years not had a great relationship with, like, I would maybe consider a wider audience. It seems like there's always been that, like, what appears to be a disconnect, but it was still
Easy Allies in there. That's fine.
yeah,
That's
Easy
good.
kind of funny's in there, but they're from legacy media basically, so kind of explains that.
Yeah.
Same with Easy Allies.
I feel like I looked through this and I'm like, what are some of these, like, what NPR? The Atlantic, Rolling Stone,
You tell me.
LA Times.
Thank God, the LA Times.
I mean, I'm sure Entertainment Weekly. I mean, I'm trying here. I don't know. Is it Variety?
I mean, it's enough people though to where it's like, okay, there's not some untoward thing going on. It's just that's how people genuinely feel. That's enough people.
Yeah.
It's not like they're not all sitting in Slack going, all right, guys, make sure you vote in Erdtree.
I just have such a hard time. Like, it's so obvious to most of us. It's just weird that apparently so many people from this jury were like, oh yeah, obviously Shadow of the Erdtree. It's like that doesn't seem weird to you for DLC. No, Erdtree. It's like, really? Huh. Okay.
Well, let's not excuse the fact that Astrobot did get nominated, and Rebirth.
Yeah, those are good.
And Metaphor.
That's correct.
And Black Myth. Didn't somebody last or 2 weeks ago say that Black Myth might not get nominated? It did.
Yeah, I thought it would get nominated.
There you go. Well, there are good options up there. I mean, I think
I got all the nominations right except for Balatro. That was the one that threw me off.
Oh,
I hedged on it right at the last minute too. I brought it up in the video and I put Silent Hill 2 in there instead.
Oh, John, you almost had a perfect score.
I know. I even guessed Erdtree because it was so obvious. It was so obvious.
That was your bingo, your middle bingo card, right? That was the freebie.
So close. Yeah, but I mean, all the other ones I'm fine with. It's just that Erdtree thing, man. I don't know. That's, I saw that pop up and that's the most disconnected I felt from games media in a long time. I'm like, really? Everyone said Erdtree? Or enough people said it to get it in there? Really? Now, that's the one.
Okay, so here's my question though. I mean, would it be fair to say that every year there's always this argument of why is this there but not X, Y, and Z? This is just maybe a little bit more egregious per se, but like every year this happens.
Yeah, because it's not about game quality or I like this game more than that one. It's like, why is DLC here? Like, everyone has that same question. It's not like someone's not like, oh, why is Balatro here instead of Silent Hill, or why is
some people are saying that,
but like not everyone's saying the same thing. Everyone's like, why is Balatro here instead of Space Marine 2, or why is Black Myth here instead of Silent Hill 2? Everyone honed in on that immediately and was like, why is DLC here? That was it. It's just everyone said the same thing. So it's so weird to me that all, like, I'd say like 90% of us looked at that and said, okay, this doesn't seem correct, doesn't fit. Somehow, I don't know, the jury here was like, yeah, Erdtree. Yeah, that's the one.
I'll say this. It's what's their language that they said, right? They said expansion packs, new game seasons, DLCs, remakes, and remasters. Remasters? You mean like when they're the exact same game?
Yeah, I'm confused about that one too. The remasters thing is like
just a frame rate and resolution bump and a port to a new console. I mean, that's almost always what a remaster is. I feel like we had a bad year in games if a remaster ever wins. Just gonna put that out there.
Last of Us Part 2 remastered. How'd that rate?
High, but it's a remaster. We know that's not gonna win or get nominated.
Like a snub to me. Let me see.
Oh, maybe they'll get out
next year.
Part 2 won a lot of Game of the Year awards when it came out too. So technically, the remaster should be eligible again.
Sounds like some internal politicking going on over there. It rated a 90 on 91 reviews.
You know what it is? Astrobot was just that good.
Just that game wins. I hope that you know what? That was my Game of the Year pick in the last Spawncast episode we did, where I just did all about the Game Awards. I said Astrobot's taking it home.
I have not been able to make those. I keep sleeping in.
We ended up just streaming on Saturday because we had some issues, and we ended up just streamed it 3:00 on Saturday. It actually went well. It was like an hour and a half. We just literally went through every single category for the Game Awards and just talked about it and tried to give our prediction on what could win.
Oh, that's nice. It's hard for me to make that new time slot, but I'll try and pop in every so often. All right, well that's game of the year. Any closing thoughts on that, John?
I'm disappointed. DLC. What is going on? What are we doing around here, people? What is this? DLC. There's 12 different esports categories, but man, if we get a DLC, best DLC in here, where's the problem? No room. They did action game, and then they did action adventure game. Okay, thanks, Game Awards. No room for DLC.
Oh, you know what? I should have put this story near the Black Friday sales, but we have to mention this. Did you know you can get a free PS5 if you buy a lot of jewelry?
I saw that. It's okay.
I've never even heard of this company, Hellsberg. Do they have like retail locations?
What's the play here? So that the guy like buys a bunch of jewelry for their wife, and like I get a PS5.
So to explain the news here, it's a real promotion from this jewelry store called Hellsberg. It's on their website. Like I looked at it and everything. It's a real promotion. Spend $1,799, get a free PlayStation 5.
Sounds like a deal.
Sounds like a crazy deal. You're telling me kill two birds with one stone? That's not a small value. That is a $400 value at least. You can get a whole PlayStation PS5. It shows a disk drive model, I think.
Okay.
However, I would be furious if they gave me a digital edition after buying $1,800 of jewelry. So
right. I wonder if somebody out there's trying to game the system. Like, hold on, let me see if I can buy that much jewelry, get the PS5, and then flip the jewelry and break even on that. You know, somebody out there doing the math.
What is even the promotion? Like, you have to like mail it in and they send it to, or like, do Hellsberg locations have consoles in stock?
Oh, they better for $1,800. That thing better be under the desk, ready to roll. Like as soon as it checks out, they just put it on the table for you and you leave with it.
I better leave the register with a PlayStation 5.
Yep.
So there you go. If you're holiday shopping, is it still on their site? Is it still available? I gotta see this. I gotta see if it's still available. Like when's this run to?
Ryan's about to buy it for his collection. Still won't buy those AirPods.
Oh, it's gone. It's not on there anymore.
Maybe it worked. The promotion worked.
We might have just talked about an outdated sale.
Oh, wow. Shame for the people out there who wanted to buy $1,800 worth of jewelry to get a free PS5.
You might have had a special someone out there. You never know, right? All right. Well, you got any? Let's do some questions here, John.
Yeah, let me go over the questions here. Let's see. This is from Blake Merritt. Again, you two can drop questions over on the mailbag thread that I post up each week ahead of the episodes. 10 different questions, which we actually already went over one. That was hoping for that Helldivers DualSense controller. So they'll be very happy in a few weeks, it looks like. Blake Merritt says, my question got messed up last week due to spell check. But after playing Astrobot, I realized there are a lot of legacy PlayStation titles I've missed out on. If you could recommend one series or game I should check out, what would it be, new or old? And I've already played all the Jack games, Ryan. That's what they said.
You can always replay them.
Oh, there you go. There it is.
Wasn't our answer 2 weeks ago Sly Cooper?
Sly Cooper's a good one. That's because it's there. You can play it on PlayStation Premium, or you just buy it, and it's obviously, I think it's worth the money. Was it $10 or something? 10, I think. Yeah, easy. I'm trying to think of one that's legacy that's obviously available right there. See, I still do the thing where because I think back on the old days of PlayStation and playing like Metal Gear Solid, I still kind of attribute that to PlayStation, even though I probably shouldn't anymore. But man, if you have not played the original Metal Gear Solid,
John's not thinking of any PlayStation IPs. If you want, if you're
thinking of like the old days, man, with that.
Yeah, okay, if you want platformer adjacent, right? That's why Sly Cooper is a good pick. Ape Escape.
Sly Cooper's a good pick. Yeah, I mean, if you
Ape
Infamous
Escape,
is good,
or and slight Astrobot spoiler, but like,
oh gosh,
slight. All I'll say is like Loco Roco. So if you enjoyed what you saw in Astrobot, like Loco Roco Remastered is on PSN as well. And you can get the full experience of a Loco Roco game. That's a good one too.
That is a good one. That was a good one. Okay. I still think Sly Cooper's the move. It's easily accessible and it still holds up pretty well, I think.
Oh yeah. Parappa's on there. Parappa's
on there,
remastered, yeah. And that's a very like 90s game. Like it's a product of its time. You got to check that out.
I should ask, although I assume that they've played the original God of War. Because it's really funny. I see people now who say they have not played the original God of War games and they've only played the newer one. And that is one that, at this point, you think of classic IPs, the old angry Kratos that jumps around and hits things a lot. That's a good one. Although not easily accessible on the PS5.
No, they would have to stream it. I would recommend not doing that. Like, I just can't recommend. I just can't. To stream it's just not fun.
Man. Well, if you have a PS3,
if you have a PlayStation 3, yeah.
It still looks good on there too.
By the God of War collection.
Yeah. Or I guess technically you could play the third one, but like that, the one where that starts off, you'll be so confused and lost.
Yeah.
So you want to start with. Here's hoping they actually do have plans for that, a remastered collection of those. By the way, that'd be nice. This is from Omni Beast, who says, with the news of a potential PlayStation handheld, what price range do you see the handheld being in? Also, what generation of PS games do you see being the main focus for the handheld? PS4, PS5, or PS6? Any legacy generations?
Well, it would just be what's available on PSN. So it's 4, 5 minimum, I would say. And since PSN now has a bunch of re-releases, you would have access to the native PS4, 5 premium titles. So anything that's, available on premium that can range from PS1, 2, and PSP titles, those it's just foundationally like PS4 and up basically is what we're looking at. The focus wouldn't necessarily be one over the other. It would be PS4 and up, anything that's on the PlayStation Store. The big question is like, what would they do with PlayStation 6? Would they whitelist or blacklist certain games, or would they even support PS6 titles? But it would be basically everything PSN, PS4 and up. Price range, John, what do you think?
Well, that's the other thing. Another person asked about, I think a bunch of people were asking about the pricing. Like Mikey asked, what do you guys expect the price point of the rumored PlayStation handheld would be given if it did come to market? Would it be as expensive as the base console or even more? And they say, cheers. Shout out to Mikey. That's going to be tough because my thought immediately was $500 for the handheld.
Yeah.
Just looking at the market, the Steam Deck, the ROG Ally, the Lenovo Legion Go, they're more expensive than that many times, right? So that $500 price point is about average actually right now in the market. And that might put it $100 less than the PS6. I think the PS6 can be $600. So
yeah.
It would, technically it'd come in cheaper than that system, but it's going to be expensive. That's the thing. I don't know. Maybe people won't view it as that in 2020. It's going to be expensive either way, but in 2027, we'll even be further into like any kind of inflation that would have happened. So maybe by then it'll be in that neighborhood of what the Vita would have released in 2011. So
it'll be a lot. It's going to be a lot. It will not be 200 like the Portal. It will not be 250 like a Vita. It will be a lot.
Kind of makes you think that Portal then has a lane then to exist alongside of it if it would be $200 or even $250 if it's a 4K screen or something.
100%. Yeah, that's like the Portal wouldn't go away in this scenario. Like it would be your entry level device.
This is from Joe, who says, Joe McKenna says, I feel like Sony hasn't had a good controversy recently. When do you think the next PlayStation Plus price hike will be?
I don't know. What would be the most like truly recent controversy? Probably Concord. And then before that would have been the Helldivers 2 PSN fiasco, if we're talking like really big things. So I don't know. It could happen next week. This company gets them all the time now.
30th anniversary coming up. PlayStation Plus price hike.
There's a very good chance they could fumble the bag right there. It depends on what you consider a big controversy. You could argue that the PS5 Pro 30th anniversary console was a controversy. People were very upset that they couldn't buy one. This company's always doing something that's upsetting somebody out there. That
means they're very passionate. It goes both ways. They can be really excited and give you money for a game, and they can also be really annoyed and yell at you online. So it goes Goes both ways, Eddie.
I'm sure they've got a few more in the chamber for 2024. Let's put it that way.
We'll see. James says, do you think Microsoft Flight Simulator will ever come to PS5 with VR support? I mean, at this point, anything's possible with Microsoft.
Well, that's an interesting question, though. That's a good one, because will they go out of their way to do VR stuff for the other guy?
That's a good question.
I would say no, considering it would be even tough for like any game to do VR nowadays. So especially 2D stuff,
Flight Simulator would be an interesting one, because what's interesting about that is it's the download size is low because it's all streamed in from the cloud, like all the assets on the ground, and it looks incredible. But it's also very difficult for the Xbox Series to run, and if you're running it on the PS5 through VR where you have two screens, I don't know if that's a better candidate next generation for that, or maybe for the PS5 Pro. That would be tough in VR. It would look. I think it might be vomit inducing for some people.
Doesn't the game have VR or offline assets though? Like you can play it offline, can't you?
No, the new one you can't.
Oh, it's completely online.
That was a whole thing. There was a whole thing that happened at launch where it wasn't working properly and people couldn't play it.
But am I incorrect with like how it came out initially? I played it right when
the last generation one, or the last one did, where you could download like 150 some odd gigabytes worth, and you would be able to play it offline. The new one, though, they're saying it's like petabytes of data, and they have to store it on the server, and it'll load it in through the cloud as you play. So when you download on your Xbox Series, like I checked it out, and I couldn't get in. Like it just stopped. It wouldn't work. But it was 11 gigabytes, so it's pretty quick. But it streams everything in, and that's how they're doing it here and probably going forward. The cool thing about that, technically, and this would be really cool for VR, by the way, is when you fly around, things that are happening in the world, like real-time weather, let's say there's a hurricane forming out in like the Atlantic, it's there. Like it exists in your world in real time. So that's kind of neat to be like, okay, I'm in VR on the PS5 Pro. I want to see this thing actually like in front of me. You can do that. So
I guess the more you lay it out like that, then it's highly unlikely. I was already inclined to say it's probably not happening. So
yeah,
I'd say no.
Christian Hernandez says, in a perfect world where every PlayStation system was accessible to buy along with its games, but which system and game would you recommend to a new gamer? Oh, every system was accessible to buy along with its games. So someone brand new coming into gaming, what system and what game, Ryan?
I get the framing of the question, but I feel like these things are accessible. PS1s are cheap. PS2s are cheap. The games are not. So I guess that's fair. Depending on the game. Like I can't tell somebody to go pick up a PS1 today and say, oh yeah, it's an RPG. Like it's the house of RPGs, because RPGs are damn near like $80 on it.
Keep in mind, accessibility might also be connecting the system to your TV, because you're doing yellow, red, white cables and stuff. Which
you're right.
I mean, let's be real. In our world, it's like the kid. If you show a kid a CRT, they're like, "Why does this TV have a whole back to it?"
All right. You're right. I'm being a little goofy over here. Probably PS. You know what? I was gonna say PS2. I'm going PS3.
Yeah, okay. I was gonna go PS3. I was like, PS3, backwards compatible PS3.
Oh,
got the whole library. PS1, 2, and 3 right there in front of you.
I think PS3 because like it's modern enough. Because I think it would be maybe not the best recommendation if you say, hey, buy this game console, and clearly like your friends socially, like growing up as a kid, like other kids are probably gonna be playing games online. That's the first console that's really like truly online. PS2 had online games, sure, but it's not quite like PS3, where it was the first truly internet connected console, had a storefront, friends list, messaging, a completely baked in UI that handles all that stuff. So it probably would be PS3 for like today's children growing up.
Yeah, starting with the classics. You get the PS3, you get Antonio Pro Skater 1, and you let Warehouse and you Superman Goldfinger just take him the rest of the way. That's it.
On a PS3.
Yeah, but it'll look better, and it's wireless controller. We got to get rid of the cables, though. Like, that's the thing. Kids now, they have no idea about wired controllers. It's actually very weird. I showed some of the kids the controllers, like the older ones, and they're like, why does it have a cable? They're actually confused. It's so weird.
Just runs and gets the scissors. Oh, get rid of this real quick.
Dude, they have no idea. It's so funny. Like it's a wireless world that we walked into, but they were like born in the wireless world. It's so strange. Yeah, dude, it's like that. Seriously. So the PS3 itself is a good idea because it's wireless connection for the controller. It has HDMI for modern TVs, and it can play everything PS1, PS2, or PS3. So that's the system to get for a new gamer. Get this PS5 stuff out of here for them, right? They got to learn from the beginning, but they got to learn. They learn from the beginning, right?
Well, now you're saying they got to learn with a 6-axis.
Well, okay, let's not be mean about it. Okay, we give the DualShock 3, but Ryan, you can pick up all the Jack games. Sly Cooper's right there, all on the PS2.
Hey, I'm aware.
If they got to learn, Grand Theft Auto 3 is available for the kids. And
Imagine that you have to start with Grand Theft Auto 3. You got to see where you got to see where it all began. You ain't lived till you went on a rampage at 6 stars.
I'm telling you, there's a good library of games. The third-party offerings for that PS2 was legendary. But then even on the PS3, you still have like little Big Planets and stuff you can play with the kids. And PlayStation All-Stars is there. Sackboy gets suplex people.
Heavenly Sword, Layer.
Infamous, Heavenly Sword, Motorstorm. Motorstorm's blast. You play that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You ain't lived until you let Motorstorm sit on the XMB, hover over the icon, then it blasts pendulum
explodes
at you.
your surround sound.
Just
You're not ready for that.
Nope.
This is from Mo Beast Gaming, who says, can one of the episodes be both of you play a PSVR 2 game together, maybe a funny game, co-op, multiplayer, etc.? There's a lot of options. I'm a big VR player on all platforms. If you guys need suggestions, when you guys do it, I'll send you some. And then that's the end of it. That's the end of the message. Just stops right there.
Yeah, there are a few multiplayer VR things we could do. I think I've only got Pavlov right now installed. Pavlov's like kind of the big one, but I know there's a lot of other options out there now.
PSVR 2 games, gonna play that at some point.
John needs an excuse to whip out the PSVR 2. I know he's slacking.
I do.
He's slacking.
I feel bad. It always just sits there. Like, and it's not even just me. There are other people I talked to who bought it, and they're like, "Yeah, I played it like twice, and I put it away." It's like, well,
actually, you know what's funny? Right. I just gotten a code for. I do want to shout this out because this game looks so goofy, but I want to get the name right here. It is that. Have you've seen it, John? That trombone looking game, or something, whatever it's called.
The one's like physics based.
Trombone Champ, yeah, it's so goofy. Trombone Champ. This is from Flat to VR, by the way. This is their first big project. Flat to VR, I mean, very important work they're doing, because as the company name implies, Flat to VR, they're there to be a mediator of getting 3D games, well, 2D games on a screen, mind you, but getting these games converted into a virtual environment, sort of reducing that friction between the studio that doesn't want to make a VR version and putting it out that way. Looks really cool. It's a very goofy game. Haven't played a whole lot of it.
You got a code for it? You checking it out?
Yeah, I've only played a little, but it's very funny. Very fun too.
Okay. Good stuff. Let's see. This is from Medallion, who says, congrats on passing 10 plus episodes so far. And the name of the podcast is finally sticking. Do you plan to do live streams of the show at some point in the future?
We could. We
thought about maybe we do one where we like every now and then we do one where we just take questions from the chat for like an hour. And it's like a bonus episode, something like that, rather than do a whole formal one where we just basically go back and forth here and we can't necessarily keep an eye on the chat while we're doing it. That'd be fun to do like a little Q&A thing with the audience out there.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Chat. Yeah. So then we can recognize some of the patrons and stuff who follow along and support the show and do it live, and that'd be fun. I think we can set that up. Usually Ryan and I end up recording these like late at night, and I can't imagine that's like great live stream time. So
this is a similar time to when you would live stream a Spawncast.
Yeah. This just goes longer sometimes, but we could probably figure out something where it's like we start at 8 o'clock or something, like a primetime thing, and it's like an hour, and we'll just kind of chat it up with no plan or anything, just fire it up and go. So that could be fun.
For sure.
Yeah, maybe like once every like 6 weeks or 2 months, so we could do that as we have time. This is from Game Bro. It says, "Hey fellas, I've recently been enjoying my Ambernic RG XX35 SP. That's the Game Boy Advance SP form factor, and it can emulate PS1 games. Which games from that library would you recommend where the form factor would accommodate well?" Yeah, so this is I don't know if you've seen these, Ryan. These handheld emulation devices. They're really good for PS1 in particular, that generation, because we're still in that 4x3 orientation.
Yeah.
And the games aren't overly difficult to emulate anymore for these things. And the screen quality is nice. So PS1 games work great on these things. The only thing is I would say for that is the SP one, limited controller space.
I can't remember the name of it, but I'm sure if I saw a picture, I'd probably see it. I've seen all these things. Yeah.
Yep.
Little handheld.
It looks like a Game Boy Advance SP, just
clamshell.
Yeah. Yep. Just like that. But it plays PS1 games very well. So they're asking any which games from that PS1 library would recommend where the form factor would accommodate well. So I would probably recommend away from anything super fast or action oriented personally. So I mentioned Tony Hawk Pro Skater earlier. I would not recommend it for this, for example.
Like I said, it's the king of RPGs. PS1 has so many amazing RPGs. Like if we're talking about like the handheld form factor, I mean, maybe it's not going to be like full blown 3D stuff that you kind of expect out of those early PS1 games, but like, Wild Arms or Legend of Dragoon, Castlevania titles.
I'll throw you one. We'll go with Xenogears.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
There's a ton of good stuff. That would be like perfect for that form factor.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking, somewhere in there. I think platformers would work. So if you did like a Mega Man, like any of the X series, so X4, X5, F6 if you have time, but like definitely X4 and X5 would be cool to play on there for the PS1 versions.
I think Spyro would probably play nice on it.
It would, because that was like that was very reliant on the D-pad early on, so you could probably get away with that. Yeah,
I remember when they let you transfer PS1 games over to PSP, and Spyro played great on a PSP with the little analog stick, basically.
Little nub thing,
little nub,
little slider.
That's all you needed.
That's all you needed. That was it. That's everything, Ryan.
Oh, very good. Guess we can move right on to PSX Gonna Give It To You, a segment where we cover some kind of nostalgic time in PlayStation history, maybe something a little bit obscure, maybe a cool anecdote or fact about PlayStation history. And because we are at the 30th anniversary of PlayStation, we got to go OG. We got to go very cool here. This is an anecdote I've always really liked. It came out of a Polygon article like 5-6 years ago, and that's how we ever learned about this like interesting story about the PlayStation name. I think a lot of people might be aware of like, the whole Sony Nintendo thing, Play Space Station. No, not that we're talking about here. Initially, at the time, this was the Sony CEO, Noria Oga. Noria Oga is the one that like approved it after the whole Nintendo PlayStation spat. Again, that's all history that has kind of been well documented now, but he already approved the project at this time, right? But Ken Kutaragi, a few other executives, they went to go pitch the idea to Akio Morita. He's the CEO of Sony. At the time, he was like kind of out the door, bedridden, not doing that well or something. So I guess what they did is they went to his house because he was in bed sick, and they did a meeting there to pitch the PlayStation to them. But it was like more of a formality. Like the PlayStation was already approved by Noria Oga. So no matter what, it was going to happen. So they went there as kind of a gesture, a culture thing, show it to Akio Morita. And he loved the pitch, thought it was great. He said, "I don't like the name though. Yeah, change the name." And so they left that meeting and they went, "Oh shit. What we already like registered it. Like this thing's going to be called the PlayStation." And I guess they like didn't really know what to do for a few weeks, maybe a month or something. And the sort of morbid thing here is that Morita then had a severe stroke. And so it seemed pretty clear that he was not going to go back to work. And so then they went back to Noria Oga and he said, "Yeah, we'll just roll with PlayStation."
So they just kept going.
There was like a moment where like they were like not going to call this thing PlayStation in honor of like the Sony CEO that like said, or the founder, I should say, not the CEO. CEO is Norio Oga. Aki Morita was the founder. So it was like
it was that close.
A brief period where, yeah, like I guess Ken and like a few other executives, they were okay with the name, but they must have genuinely thought like, damn, like what do we do? Because that's something that they maybe would have changed.
I wonder what like was it just it being too literal for them? Like, oh, it's a station you play at, and like they're like PlayStation, they didn't like that name. I don't know. That's interesting because now maybe it's because we've just known it for as long as we have, right? PlayStation. It sounds obvious. It's to go back in time and hear some of these names for the first time. I do wonder how you'd react. Like coming up with a name for this show, for example, was a whole thing back and forth. But now you hear Click R3 and like, oh yeah, that's okay. That's the podcast. But like I don't know if somebody came to you. So for like the PlayStation, oh, we're coming up with PlayStation or Xbox. Coming up with Xbox. It's very basic. It's a box that has an X on it. And it's Xbox. That's it. Direct Xbox. Or like GameCube. It's a cube you play games on. It's like, oh gosh, this all sounds really dumb. but now it's like synonymous, right? It's like, yeah, PlayStation, obviously.
It probably sounds silly like the first time you say it, but eventually things stick.
Right. And and then obviously never like PlayStation 5. So the just time. It's that's an interesting piece of history. I didn't know that it was that close. There was that time where they were. What do you think the other names were they came up with? There's probably a whole whiteboard, a whole bunch of like scratch pads of them like just coming up with names.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's just what I love about this one is that they like the whole idea to go there and pitch it to Aki Morita was like just a formality. Like they were approved and everything. Like this thing was happening. So I honestly, I don't know what they would have done if like he didn't even like it, period, and thought maybe don't do this.
Let's be real. Do you think they were just going to push it through? Whatever.
Probably. Yeah, probably. But it's just like it's just so morbid to where it's like, oh well, he had a stroke and he's not coming back. I guess it's a PlayStation now.
That's it. Just that was the meaning.
Yeah, like PlayStation. He's not coming back, so I think we're in the clear.
Yeah, I think we're in the clear. Oh, hey, that's the PlayStation origin story apparently for the name. So
we got 30 years, baby. PlayStation history.
That's a fun anecdote. That's fun.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting. All right. Is that everything, Ryan?
I think that's it. I mean, I'm sure we'll miss something tomorrow, but I think we're good.
Right. Yeah, so it's going to leak out. Watch when we put this up, it's going to leak out that Sony's having their State of Play or PlayStation experience next week on the 3rd. We've been joking about it this whole time.
You can thank us because we put out a Click R3.
Almost 3 hour long Click R3, actually. Very close.
It's a big one.
Very close. All right. Well, that's going to do it for Click R3, number 12. That's Ryan over there. You can check him out, of course, on YouTube. I'm sure he'll make all like 10 other videos over the next like 3 days. So check him out. And I'm sure I'll be kicking something around here soon as we head into Thanksgiving. So hopefully everyone has a good holiday weekend. If you're celebrating, eat some good food, see some friends, family, and we will be back in a couple of weeks. And I think we'll see if Nano could join us ahead of the Game Awards, see what else happened by then. Maybe some PlayStation experience, some announcements. We'll see. But we'll see you guys then.